Three, two, one. And we are once again live for this very special episode of Cosmic Goop Radio. I'm Scotty. I'm here with the great expert, Mortal Kombat lore expert, tabmok99. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, what's going on, guys? This is tabmok99. Scotty, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to getting into Mortal Kombat with you.
For sure, for sure. So as of the recording of this video, it's Sunday night. The movie came out Friday. You actually got a chance to see it in theaters, so that's pretty cool.
Yes, I got to see it in IMAX, and then afterwards I watched it again on HBO Max, so a lot of fun.
Very cool. Actually, I saw that video you guys uploaded. I got 15 minutes in between the errands I was running, so it actually made me more hyped to talk about the movie because you get to respond to what other people are saying. So I think that'll be for sure. Before we get into the movie, I just kind of wanted to go over some things about Mortal Kombat as a brand because I think it's kind of important to kind of how we're going into the movie as we review it. I think it's important to kind of tie the movie into the brand that Mortal Kombat's presented itself over the years.
I think that's right. And I know you come from a big anime background, so I'm sure you've seen the meme where, like, here's the anime and it's something awesome, and then here's the Netflix adaptation and it's something, like, super crappy.
Yeah, so that's that's definitely one way to look at it because it's not just, sticking to a source material letter by letter. It's also kind of getting a tone, getting the aesthetic right, or getting a tone and aesthetic that kind of fits, right? So,
but I agree with you. It's a good idea to sort of let's get into Mortal Kombat and what it is and how it's, evolved over the years versus now let's take a look at this thing that they've just built and they've just released and how they've adapted it.
Exactly. You read my mind. So I've seen a lot of your videos, and I'm sure the fans have as well, but what's your background in Mortal Kombat? How'd you get into it and grow up with it?
So I've been into Mortal Kombat ever since the first one came out. And I was a big Super Nintendo guy, but my friends were Sega Genesis guys. So I had seen the commercials on TV. I had seen the merchandise. They had like gaming strategy guides and stuff like that at the store. So I sort of knew about Mortal Kombat, but my friends rented it one day from Blockbuster. So that shows you how how long a time ago this was. We came over to their house. They had like a bunch of people over. They did the blood code, ABAC, ABB. God knows how they got that code, probably from GamePro. And we were all playing with all the blood on. And we were all taking turns, and just selecting our characters and just having fun with it and figuring out fatalities. We actually managed to do Scorpion's fatality because it was just up.
Right.
And it was just like the craziest, coolest. It was like a different kind of game. It was so different from anything I'd ever played. And I was hooked. I was like super into Mortal Kombat ever since then. And I had a computer. There was really no such thing as internet, at least not for me. There was like the old monochrome computers. We would type up strategy guides. We would like figure out what all the moves were, type them up, make them fit on one page so that we could play through the game and do everything. And eventually I was able to memorize all the moves. And when MK2 came out in arcades, oh man, it was just amazing. So I've been hooked ever since part one. I really loved getting into the lore. I remember playing the game. I had to get it for myself. So I got it on the Super Nintendo, which of course didn't have blood. But I was okay with that because at that point I was already so invested in like the gameplay, the characters, the special moves, how to pull everything off. It was fun to kind of explore the differences because back then playing the same game on two different consoles was a completely different experience. It's not like nowadays. They were completely different from each other. So I kind of got into like a slightly different game pretty much. And I loved getting into the lore. I would hook it up to a VCR and record the endings and, unlock all the endings. I would like play it as, I'd play as Scorpion, get all the way to Shang Tsung, beat him, hit record, and then do the same thing with Johnny Cage and do the same thing with Sonya and get everybody. Then I could sit there and watch the endings again on tape. And I pretty much knew all the bios, all the endings. I got super into it. And I've been a big fan of Mortal Kombat ever since. And not just the lore, although that's what most people know me from, is from doing the lore videos. But I love everything about it. I love the characters. I love going behind the scenes and seeing what the developers were saying. I love the gameplay. I like, of course, trying to kick ass and win when I can. Everything about it.
Wow, that's so you've been quite the chronographer of the series even from the beginning.
From the beginning, yeah. I was always going to like the comic book shop and getting all the latest issues. Ever since Blood and Thunder came out by Malibu, I remember sending away for the Midway comics. I've still got those. I haven't lost them. I got the action figures from Hasbro, which I found out later they were just repurposed G.I. Joe figures. That's why they looked so off, because they weren't built for Mortal Kombat. They just, it was a weird thing that happened. But yeah, I've been into Mortal Kombat ever since then, all aspects of it.
Well, it's very cool. So, well, just to talk about my history with it, as a kid in the 90s, I just, I kind of had a little thing with violence where, like, the level of gore just was a little too much for me. I have a bit of OCD, well, a bit. Especially back then, I had a lot of OCD. So anything that was too violent kind of stuck with me. Actually, my first exposure to Mortal Kombat was walking through a Walmart. And then on, you know how they have the attract mode on this SNES on display? I guess they had Sub-Zero ripping out Liu Kang's spine and head, and the blood dripping out of the spine, and that just etched into my brain as a kid. And that kind of,
I'm shocked that Walmart had that part out on display.
yeah. Well, we're in Canada, so maybe it was different up here for some reason. But yeah, that definitely stuck with me and made me not kind of want to back off the series a little bit. I did watch the movies and all that stuff, but the actual games, like, that always kind of freaked me out about it. So I kind of, to substitute it, I kind of watched things like WMAC Masters. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I've seen every episode. Who was your favorite character on WMAC Masters?
I think I really liked Red Dragon.
Oh, dude, you know he was Scorpion.
Yes.
This is a funny story. So I got into it because, you know, I wanted to get into everything that was related to Mortal Kombat, even just kind of loosely connected to it. So my wife and I were watching it, and she said her favorite character was Tsunami. So I was like, okay, Tsunami, that's cool. And then in the last episode, he was like the grand champion. He was the ultimate winner. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, I told you.
Wow, so he ends up winning the whole thing?
Yeah, okay, so in the beginning, it was more like a sports thing, and then they kind of turned it into more like a story-based thing. It sort of evolved as time went on. And there were some bad guys, and they were causing some trouble, and Tsunami really saved the day.
Okay. So, like, even more, because I know that Taekwondo guy, he was there for the first season. I think he wasn't in the second season. So I would have imagined, like, the sport aspect would have been dominated by him just because he was, like, a Taekwondo champion, all that stuff. But I more remember, like, Hakeem Machine. And,
yes.
You know, people always talk
and Superstar.
About, yeah, exactly. But with Hakeem, people always talk about that scene from the first Mortal Kombat movie in '95. And they say, oh, Liu Kang fights this jobber, this nobody. I'm like, that's Hakeem the Machine. Don't disrespect that guy's name.
Yeah, and also, that guy was Jax in Mortal Kombat The Live Tour.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Because I know Kerry Hoskins reprised Sonya in The Live Tour. I didn't know. Yeah, I forgot that part for some reason.
I went to Mortal Kombat The Live Tour. I remember.
What did you think of it?
It was so cool. Okay, and it sucks because people who've never been to it talk about how corny and crappy it must have been. And it's like, no, you don't know. Maybe they saw some, like, behind-the-scenes promo that they did for some local TV station, and that was corny and campy. But the actual live tour kicked ass.
Yeah, there's a YouTuber named Godzilla Mendoza. He did a little retrospective on Mortal Kombat. One of the things he did it on was the live tour. And he kind of tore it to shreds saying, oh, why are they promoting, like, positive youth values? Where's all the violence? But I mean, it's a live tour for kids. Like, you know, you got to keep it positive, right?
So he's going by that promo. He was judging it based on that promo that I'm talking about. I don't know if he actually went to the live tour, because if he did, he would have loved it. They did some amazing things. My favorite moment was when Scorpion throws his spear and he goes, get over here. And Jax, with his metal arms, he blocks it, catches it, pulls Scorpion, and he says, no, you get over here, and then uppercuts him. It was badass.
So he uses the Cole Young uppercut a couple decades in advance, eh?
Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah, so, well, Godzilla Mendoza, he's a lot younger than we are. So, yeah, I imagine he'd probably just be going by that promo.
It's very common. He didn't start this. It's just a whole lot of people would kind of make disparaging remarks about the live tour. They weren't there. It was a great thing. It was a great moment. Some of the actors, or the fighters, I should say, were so talented. You know how people fall back in MK3 where they kind of, like, look really stiff and fall straight back? They did that in real life. They fell back. Like, you know how much discipline that takes? When I saw that, I was like, whoa. Because before, I kind of thought that way they fall down in MK3 looked like a little corny and weird, and it was different from MK1 and 2. But after seeing them do it live and seeing that that's like a real thing, It changed my mind. I rethought how I looked at that MK3 falling animation. It was just there's so many little things like that. I can't even go into it. It was an awesome event. It really was.
You need to do a video on the live tour. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about it.
Yeah, there really is. Honest to God, my biggest regret in life was I didn't bring my camcorder with me. I had a VHS camcorder, that my dad had. He would have let me use it. I could have brought some tapes. I could have brought 2 or 3 tapes just to make sure I didn't run out. I just assumed they wouldn't have let you bring video recording devices into that event. They did. I could have recorded the whole thing. Kicking myself now that I don't have it.
Right. Well, you could do what a lot of YouTubers do and just try to recreate it in live action. That'd be something, eh?
Yeah, that would be something. You know what? There's a lot of talented YouTubers out there making their own Mortal Kombat fan films. No one's attempted to recreate the live tour, but yeah, that would be quite a project.
Yeah, that would be for sure. So yeah, let's go back to the fact that even from a young age, you seem very engaged in the lore. That 90s era, I like to call it kind of the Tobias era, because the lore had a certain like B-movie quality to it. Like Mortal Kombat back then felt very much like the 90s in its love for the 80s. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%, because you could see what the inspiration was. You could see that they were drawing from, and even 70s a little bit. You could see that they were drawing from 70s and 80s inspiration. That's what the Mortal Kombat was building on. But the team, they took what they were inspired by and they made it their own thing. And yes, it was like a love letter to the 70s and 80s of their favorite things from that era, but they took it and they made it their own. And one of the things that the developers have said in interviews is that they wanted to make the characters larger than life. They had this advanced video digitization equipment. They could videotape people and get those images on camera, from the camera into the game screen and make it look good. So their theory was, we waste it if we just have like these little teeny tiny graphics. If we really want to make the most out of this, have them as big as we can possibly get on the screen, but they can still move around and still like jump and stuff like that. And if you look at it, like Mortal Kombat characters are sort of bigger than any other characters in video games. Like if you look at them like side by side with Street Fighter, the Mortal Kombat ones are just slightly bigger. And that was basically their best attempt at going, high resolution.
Yeah, I think even from the beginning, it was always very character driven, more than even plot driven or mechanics driven, like other games were. So I think there's a lot to your point. I think
the graphics were a big draw too. Like the gore was good. The gore was what got really people into it, but that combined with the photorealism of the graphics, it just set this perfect combination. And that, along with the lore and the satisfying fatalities and all that stuff, it was just a perfect storm. It was lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always like to say that reality is really just another word for relatability, or realism in fiction is another word for relatability. You want to make things relatable to the audience. Obviously, nobody's pulling out someone's spine from their head or anything like that, but you got these digitized actors, they're flesh and blood. So it makes it more relatable to kind of see that, rather than kind of what was going on in Street Fighter and other games.
Yeah, these guys look like real people, and Ed Boon likes to use the word, I think, hyper-realism, because he says realism is boring. But yeah, you start from realism. You start from digitized graphics that you've captured with camera, and you go from there.
It reminds me of, are you a fan at all of Sword and Sorcery?
No, what is that?
It's Conan the Barbarian?
Yeah, I've heard of him. There's actually a scene from Conan the Barbarian that was like this one little scene in the movie, kind of made its way into one of the backgrounds from Mortal Kombat 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I know you did that backgrounds video. I think I missed that part. Which scene is it?
There's this building where there's like a little design on it with some snakes, and that is reused in Khan's Arena. I will give you a link showing you exactly what part when this is over.
Wow. That's very interesting, because I've always seen Sword and Sorcery as that. It's very realistic. I don't know. So the guy who created Conan, his name's Robert E. Howard. He wrote Conan, but he also wrote a couple other stories. He wrote one about, I don't know if you can see here, but I have Kull in the background there. I don't know if you see it, but he's actually kind of the progenitor to Conan. So yeah, he wrote a lot of those stories where it's very medieval, very realistic, but he kind of set it into a prehistory so he could have fun with it, do some fantasy stuff with it. It's basically the best way I could put it is it's kind of like Lovecraft meets medieval adventure. And I think that's when fantasy is really effective, is when you make things really realistic, but you make this intrusive kind of cosmic or fantasy element kind of creep in, right? So that's when it has its largest impact. So it sounds like you agree, and it sounds like that's what hyperrealism kind of refers to.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and I think it's just basically like you exaggerate reality, you take it to the next level, you start from where we are, and then you do things that we can't really do that are impossible. But because it has that grounding, the audience is willing to suspend their disbelief.
Right, for sure.
And another thing, Katana's ending in Mortal Kombat 2 has this castle that also came from a Conan movie. So yeah, when I'm done, I'll send you both of those Conan things.
For sure. And we'll have to link it in the description because the fans need to know for sure.
They do. It's important.
Yeah, because so one other aspect of Mortal Kombat is if I bring up sword and sorcery because it feels like it's kind of the Asian sword, the closest thing to an Asian sword and sorcery thing that I feel like we're sorely missing. Like nobody's really done like Asian sword and sorcery, at least not that I know of. And I think where that comes from is that Mortal Kombat, like its big inspirations, Big Trouble in Little China, and I would argue Showdown in Little Tokyo, is that it's basically urban Westerners interpreting kind of the mythic East. Okay,
it is, and Ninja Turtles is that too.
Yeah, I would say that, but I think even more so in Mortal Kombat because you see the mythic East as it meets kind of the urban West. I know that happens in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but the thing is, what the Ninja Turtles kind of lacks is kind of all that weird sci-fi stuff, the special forces, the stuff that's a little more relatable.
Well, wait a minute. We've got alien species, we've got interdimensional invaders from Dimension X, that cross over through a portal instead of Outworld. We've got they do time travel in Ninja Turtles. I think they do have a lot of crazy sci-fi stuff. It just depends on which incarnation you go with.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just talking more about like they don't really have like I guess they have what's his name, Jones, the guy who wears the masks.
Yes.
Yeah, they have him, and he's kind of a proxy. He's kind of their Cabal in a way, I guess, or their Jax.
Yeah, they've got April too. She's also kind of like, what am I getting into? What is this secret underground world that I've fallen into, literally?
Right. So yeah, okay. I guess I did overlook Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in that respect.
Well, I just feel like because this is an American creation, sort of as a love letter to Asian culture, and I guess you could argue this came much later, but like Avatar: The Last Airbender, there's like a debate: is that really anime? Is it not anime because it's not from Asia? Well, what's your opinion on that one, anyway?
I think anime is more of a style than a where it comes from
a country. The origin, right?
Yeah, okay. Exactly. Like the Japanese could produce something that looks very American, and I'll call it an American style cartoon.
Yeah, American style, right?
I mean,
it's like New York style pizza. You don't have to be in New York to get it.
Exactly. If the Japanese make a hamburger, you're not going to say, "Oh, it's a Japanese burger." Like,
right?
It just doesn't make sense. But yeah, so I kind of talked a little bit about the Big Trouble in Little China, obviously huge influence. Raiden is borderline, kind of borders on being a ripoff of the one storm of the three storms in that movie. Although he's mixed in kind of with the God of Lightning, Raiden.
From Japanese mythology, right? Yeah, both of those were definitely sources of inspiration.
For sure. I brought this up also is Showdown in Little Tokyo. I don't know if either of them actually watched that movie. Are you familiar with that movie at all?
No, we could ask them if they were familiar with it.
Okay. So if you've never seen it or heard anything about it, I highly recommend as a Mortal Kombat fan, you check it out because it also has that kind of the mythic East meaning the urban West, but it does it in like a really interesting way. It's actually by the same guy who did Commando. So it's very over the top.
Well, you know what? I'm going to see it now. Showdown in Little Tokyo.
Yeah, I want you to go in as clean as possible because you'll be like I think you'll be surprised by what's in the movie, and there's more than one or two Mortal Kombat connections you can make.
I'll check it out. They talk about the designers, the Mortal Kombat developers have talked about other sources of inspiration. Like we know about Enter the Dragon, obviously. Gordon Liu was a big one. In fact, Gordon Liu is where Liu Kang got his name from.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they talked about like Jean-Claude Van Damme because before they did Mortal Kombat, they were trying to get like a Universal Soldier tie-in, and they wanted to do a fighting game, and they wanted that to be it. And when that fell through, they're like, let's just do our own fighting game, and it was like turned out to be a way bigger for them, I think, than Universal Soldier ever would have been.
Yeah, for sure. Because then at that point, it would have been a forgettable, like movie tie-in game, right? And now they made their own thing, and it's a lot more memorable, right?
Yeah, we would not be playing Universal Soldier 11. I'm just saying.
that's for sure. But yeah, so that's kind of the Tobias era, I like to call, at least.
It is the Tobias era. Yeah, he was the guy in charge. And he wore a lot of hats. He wasn't just the lore guy. I mean, he developed the comic tie-in for it. He was doing all the graphics and stuff like that. Like, he was the one ripping the sprites, like after they digitized people and separating them from the background, which was like a painstaking process. He would come up with different like moves, and he would work on like, okay, which character has which weapon, and coming up with names for the characters. Like, there was a lot more than just being the story writer. But when the Tobias era, he did a lot more, especially when he did Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. That one was kind of like his brainchild. I don't know if you played that one.
I haven't played it, but I've seen the cutscenes. I've seen people very frustrated trying to play it. I've seen your review of the Sub-Zero Gold I think it was from Brazil.
The pirate one, yeah. I wasn't going to count that as his, but oh man, it took me like 10 years to get that game. I'm so glad I got it. That's
quite the collector's item. If you ever thought of selling it, you probably get like quite the price for it.
Maybe.
But yeah, it's probably sacred. Yeah, I really like what Sub-Zero Mythologies was trying to do. Like, it was trying to expand on the lore. It was trying to flesh it out more. And actually, that's my favorite, for all the cheesiness of those cutscenes. That's actually my favorite iteration of Sub-Zero.
Oh yeah, John Turk did great. Hey, you want to know something really ironic? So John Turk, who played Sub-Zero in that game, and Rich DiVizio, whose biggest role in that game was Quan Chi, but he had a lot of other roles there. Those two actually ended up on the set of The Dark Knight, and they were both working for the Joker in that movie.
Oh, I didn't know that. Are they are they in the background, or can you see them if you look for them?
You'll see them. If you look, okay. If you know that John Turk and Rich DiVizio are in the movie, you will recognize them. They're some of the Joker's thugs.
I have to rewatch that movie for sure. I love DiVizio's performance in that. It's just so delightfully cheesy in Mythologies.
Dude, he's great. You don't know this from playing Mortal Kombat 1. You don't know, like, hey, that guy can act.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because they're just doing certain moves, right? Like, there's only so much even physical acting they can do. But I really like. It's a very special kind of cheese. Those Sub-Zero Mythology cutscenes.
Yeah, I love it.
What I was hoping. So I'm gonna just jump ahead a little bit to the movie. We're not gonna get into it yet. But I was hoping this new movie was gonna synthesize that Sub-Zero with the Sub-Zero we get in Mortal Kombat Conquest. Because in Mortal Kombat Conquest, we kind of see the backstory of Lin Kuei ninjas, especially if you have that title Sub-Zero. And I thought they did Conquest gets a lot of hate that I don't think it deserves. I think they like flesh out a lot of things. For example, kind of what the Lin Kuei go through, and kind of just you see how Sub-Zero becomes a cold, merciless asshole, basically, right?
Mortal Kombat Conquest actually was that's where the Lin Kuei insignia comes from. That never existed before that show, and they brought it into the games later. There's other stuff from that show that ended up making its mark on the franchise, but that's probably its biggest contribution. And that show has its fans. There's people who appreciate MK Conquest.
Well, there's also the Unholy Alliance, which became the Deadly Alliance, as you probably know.
Okay, so for that one, Unholy Alliance was actually based on more ideas that came from Mortal Kombat Mythologies. So if you read the instruction manual for Mortal Kombat Mythologies, you'll see other stuff that impacted MK Conquest. Like, the name Takeda? Right. That started in MK Mythologies. They mentioned that the founder of Scorpion's ninja clan, the Shirai Ryu, was a man named Takeda.
Oh, okay, I see. So they
also mentioned that Shang Tsung and Quan Chi had formed an alliance at one point. So the idea, according to the instruction manual, was that Quan Chi would let me backtrack a little bit. Shang Tsung knew where the map of elements was that Quan Chi needed. So Shang Tsung would give that information to Quan Chi, and he'll tell him, this is where you get the map of elements. In exchange, Shang Tsung took Sindel's soul, because she's dead, gave it to Quan Chi and said, we need you to take her soul and make it evil. And it would take many years, but they did, and they gave it back to Shang Tsung and Shao Kahn. So that was kind of the little exchange that they had.
Right. Okay, that's very cool. So they were trying to tie in to the game from the beginning in the
So MK Deadly Alliance, when they said that Shang Tsung and Quan Chi are going to like get together and kind of team up, there was already a lot for there was already a precedent that had been set. 2 precedents, because Conquest and Mythologies.
So to bring it back to Godzilla Mendoza, again, he's not. I just thought he did a good retrospective, but I kind of questioned what he thought of Conquest as well, because he thought it was very cheesy and he didn't like the choreography and things like that. And he also made the point, oh, who's this show made for? Because it's too adult for kids, it's too juvenile for adults. But then I remembered when it aired. It aired after WCW on Saturday nights. So I think that was their audience, was kind of like the pro wrestling kind of like
good
90s.
Point.
Yeah.
You know what? For people who just want to sit back and enjoy like a good show with martial arts and stuff like that, I thought it was fun. Mortal Kombat has its built-in fan base. To this day, Mortal Kombat is still considered the best video game movie adaptation of all time. Maybe the new Mortal Kombat movie is considered the best video game adaptation of all time. I don't know. Either way, it's a Mortal Kombat movie that's the best, and that much is not really up for debate. It's one of them. So Conquest had like a really good thing that they were kind of following up on. Like, here's the expanded lore, here's the prequel, right, to the movies. I thought it was great. A lot of people appreciate that it was great. It is kind of, I guess some people criticize everything online, complain about it. It's good to complain about things and point out what they get wrong, because I think he was saying he didn't like the choreography, right? I mean, honestly, in some of the fights, it's very obvious when they switch to a stunt double. You can tell, because that guy didn't really look like Paulo Montalban. But whatever. Suspend your disbelief. Just go with it.
And that's the thing, is Mortal Kombat's always it's always had its degree, its ingredient of cheese. And if you don't have it in there, it's not really Mortal Kombat, at least in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about that.
I don't think it's like corny and campy like Batman 1960s style. It might have been a little bit here and there, but I think it's all good. And the music was great. Like, the music on MK Conquest was awesome, just like the music in the movies.
So actually, I wanted to talk about the movies, because that whole kind of house music trend that they were going for, those weren't in the games at all. And they started doing it in the 95 movie, and it just, even though it had never come before, it just fit, right?
It was perfect. It was perfect. And even before the movie, there was like a soundtrack, and that techno song by Oliver Adams and the Immortals, that predated the movie a little bit. But anyway, it was great. If you play Mortal Kombat 1 on Sega CD, they have like a commercial on there, because that's the first system that could really do full motion video. And they do use one of the songs off that, like that techno there. So technically it did make it into one game.
Okay.
I know, right? Like, who cares? Deep trivia. But
no, I mean, it's important, because you want to see where the DNA came from. So if it was something they were kind of flirting with already in the games, and the movies could have fleshed that out, I think that makes a lot of sense.
There was a little bit of something there to work with, and they rolled with it. And I think that everybody loved the music from the first movie, right? In the new movie, I think one of the biggest criticisms is that the music is really kind of forgettable. It really doesn't hit you that hard. I ordered the soundtrack, and I'm going to listen to it later. I was listening to a little bit of it on Spotify, but I'm getting the CD. But anyway, I did listen to some of the songs.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to the soundtrack of the new movie.
Yeah.
But part of the reason I bring up the music is because I feel like that's the other thing that's really interesting about the Mortal Kombat brand, is there's been so many iterations, and they kind of stick to a formula, they kind of stick to a tone, but for the most part, they all have kind of their own identity, yet they all end up kind of cohering and feeling connected, like kind of like a polyphony. Would you agree with that? Would you say that's kind of the aesthetical appeal of not just the different iterations of the brand, but even just like Mortal Kombat 2 or Mortal Kombat 3 themselves?
Yeah, they all have their own little flavor. You can't take like Mortal Kombat 2 music and put it over a Mortal Kombat 3 game. Like, you'll know something's a little off. They all have their own flavor.
Right.
And I feel like with 3 is when they kind of like really started to experiment a lot with like different things. Like, for example, the temple background with the pipe organ, so different from every other stage. You know what I mean? It stands out as its own thing, but it works.
Right, and it
Even
still
though,
fits in.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I think that's what's really interesting about the brand. And like even if you just take the first Mortal Kombat game, those elements, they shouldn't fit together. You have a Hollywood Jean-Claude Van Damme clone, like doing the splits, hitting people in the nuts, and then you have, like a Bruce Lee type, then you have like a cybernetic criminal type. Like it's all these different, yeah, they all come from 80s action movies, but they usually have their own subgenres. All of a sudden you mash them together and somehow it just fits. Somehow they all just play in polyphony, like I said.
Yeah, and John Tobias was really good too at coming up with like different archetypes. He really wanted to make sure he knew what each character's archetype was. Like, this guy will be the mentor, that guy will be more of a trickster, this guy will be like the hunter, that one will be the hunted. He made it all work. He kind of really fleshed them all out by giving each character their own archetype and kind of developing out for there, and then finding ways to intertwine their stories. And that's, I think, kind of the key to the success of making the lore work, because he really studied up. I don't know if you ever heard of this thing called A Hero with 1,000 Faces.
By Joseph Campbell.
Okay, so you've heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hero's journey. That's all I know about it.
Yeah, well, George Lucas studied that too when he did Star Wars, and it's kind of one of those things that really helps story writers make their fiction connect to the audience. So John Tobias was well versed in that as well as other things.
Actually, yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you made that point, because yeah, I guess when you keep things archetypally connected, then it doesn't matter if you have all these different identities or all these different tones. You have the archetypes go together, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah, and he was able to match them all very well, and every character stands out on their own. I mean, especially from the Tobias era, those characters are. I feel like they're such fan favorites. They're always going to be part of the franchise.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we've talked a lot about the Tobias era, but once at some point it sounded like he got burnt out. Like you said, he wore a lot of hats, so he probably, he got kind of worn out, kind of separated. Maybe there's a story that I don't.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think he was burnt out on anything like that. I mean, he was a hard worker. You know what I mean? He was willing to put in the hours. He was willing to do the work. That he was working at least 50, 60-hour weeks. Sometimes wouldn't leave the office, would just sleep there overnight. So I could see why you'd think he might be burnt out. But no, he was willing to keep doing that. He would keep doing that forever. He made his own gaming company. So the timing of it was unfortunate for Mortal Kombat fans, because he was in the middle of making MK Special Forces, which would have been awesome. But because he left, the game that they made without him wasn't the game that he was making,
Right, they had to kind of retool it from scratch.
We got a subpar game. It really wasn't John Tobias's work, but John Tobias left to make his own company called Studio Gigante. And the reason why he had to leave right then and there was because you can't work for Midway and also a competitor at the same time. It's like a non-compete clause. So either you're doing your own company or you're with Midway, one or the other.
Right.
At his company that he was starting to make, he had the opportunity to get a license with, I believe it was WWE, but don't quote me on that because it could have been WCW, but he needed to do a wrestling game. He also did a fighting game called Tao Feng, Fist of the Lotus. So he had to leave Midway right when he did. That kind of messed up MK Special Forces. He had the chance to make his own game with the wrestling company, so he also did a fighting game on top of that because he's good with fighting games. But unfortunately, I don't think it did that well. So Studio Gigante shut down later, and his career, he's done other stuff since then. He's been fine. He's done a lot of cool things. He ended up working at, well, he did a commercial for this. I think it was Gillette. It was like for a razor company. He did like a fighting game themed commercial where the razors were fighting each other. It's so much fun to watch. Like, just look it up on YouTube. It's a straight up like Mortal Kombat parody. And then self-parody.
Should I put like a Gillette fighting game?
Yeah, and if it doesn't show up, I'll link you to it. And he ended up working for Zynga, I think, and he was like the art director for their Wizard of Oz game. So he still had a very successful career despite what happened. And I think now he's back at Warner Brothers doing a top secret project that no one's allowed to talk about yet.
Yes, I heard of that. Apparently, he's back working with them, and I'm hoping it's a Shaolin Monks type game. I don't know about you, but yeah, I'd really
I
love
don't
that.
think it'll be Mortal Kombat related, whatever he's doing. I think it's going to be
Okay.
superhero related, but don't quote me on that.
Okay, maybe like let him test the water, see if he still has the mojo, sort of thing. I don't know.
Obviously, he still got it. Oh, he also did the Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe comic. They brought him
Oh,
back
okay.
on board for that one, so that was cool too.
Okay, very cool. But the reason I brought up his departure is because once he left, I noticed there was kind of a shift in kind of the tone of the games. They
They had to
became
carry the
more
torch without him, yeah.
right. They became more mythological than kind of the B movie action stuff they were doing.
Well,
With like
some of that was driven too by the technology. It's different. Remember, when you're telling a story in an arcade, the idea is you want people putting in their quarters and you want them playing and you want them to put in the next quarter to do the next match. There's not much opportunity for exposition. When you're doing a home game, now it's different. Now you've got all these different modes that you can do, and now you can build up this world in different ways. And so when people are comparing like the story direction that the 3D era took, that's kind of what the fans call it, the 3D era. But you could also call it the Vogel era if you wanted to name it after the new story writer, because John Vogel stepped up and continued the story without Tobias. And I think he did a really good job kind of making them the way that Tobias would have done them. But they had all these different things. It wasn't just write the bio and write the endings, although they had to do that. There was conquest mode,
right.
which started out as kind of like a training session, and there were all these like little lore tidbits that you got here and there, like you learned who the founder of the Black Dragon was. You know what I mean? You learned like where this martial arts originated. They kind of like threw in all this real world stuff along with Mortal Kombat mythology. Like, yeah, real world history, myth, all kind of blended together. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, very interesting. I haven't played through those conquest modes, but I've watched some of the cutscenes of them just because they seem like it seems like the God of War game. They really, I mean, I know they already did it with Shaolin Monks, but I'd love to see more God of War style Mortal Kombat games.
I think a lot of people would. I mean, and I loved it. Like in MK Deception, they took Conquest from being like this training thing with text to really like full world exploration and all that. It was just so good. And there's even more stuff because then you just run around talking to random people, and these NPCs will tell you even more tidbits of information. And then some of them would talk in reverse speech. Some of them like it would just be a recorded message played backwards. So of course, what did all the Mortal Kombat fans do? They would record them, reverse it, and hear what they're really saying.
For sure. It's very much in the Mortal Kombat tradition to make your fans work and really get at the secrets.
Yep. Yeah, and it was fun to like piece all that stuff together, and we learned so much more. Like all the characters have such a rich history.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of rich history, I really loved what they did with the characters Ermac, and this was later, but also Scarlet. So
Yeah.
Just to give a little background to kind of my interest in philosophy, I'm a very big Nietzsche fan. I don't know if you're familiar with Friedrich Nietzsche.
Man or Superman?
Well, no, just like his philosophy in general. Like it's actually more the Overman. Sorry, I have to be super nerdy with Nietzsche. But he's like a big belief. Like he kind of believes that consciousness is kind of bullshit. It's really all about the instincts, right? Like consciousness is epiphenomenal. It happens after the instincts decide what you're going to be conscious of what you're going to decide, sort of thing, right? And the reason I bring it up is because it kind of gives this worldview, or well, this human view that like human beings, we're all kind of just all these different wills like mashed together, going at it. Sometimes they cooperate, sometimes they compete for what the net product of your actions are gonna be. And I bring this up because I always felt like Ermac and Scarlet, their backstory really captured that very well. This idea of like having this multiplicity of voices, this plurality of different just people inside you, and that's kind of what your entity is. Because I feel like that's what human beings kind of are, anyways, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad you mentioned that too, like Ermac and Scarlet, because those two are interconnected in so many ways. They have like a very shared history. Ermac started out as a rumor that you could play as a red ninja. Scarlet started out as a rumor that you could play as a red female ninja. And those are both rumors that the fans started. The developer said, okay, we're doing it. This is what you guys requested. We're putting them in the game. And it is funny that they kind of both have that. Like Ermac is a collection of souls in one body, and Scarlet is like a collection of different warriors' blood all fused together into one body. It really is the perfect symmetry between the two of them. They really are counterparts to each other.
Yeah, and I think the stories behind their creations also feed into that because they're essentially the creation of both of them was a collection of rumors, right? The one
Yeah.
rumor that the one rumor that you could see the ninja's costume as red, which isn't true, but that's the rumor that's still some people believe today. The error macro, and they kind of bunch those together. You get Ermac, so it's fitting that they be these collections of souls.
It is. It's great.
For sure. And then I really liked in Mortal Kombat 9 ending when Ermac, it basically his ending is King Jared is one of the souls in him. We find out whether that's canon or not is, I guess, debatable. Unless there's
I would
something
say it's canon because anything that happened in the past,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Ermac's past doesn't depend on his victory in the present. So I would say that's canon no matter what. The only thing that would not be canon is that King Jared's soul rises to take dominance over all the other ones.
Right. So, and I actually really like that they wrote that in because that's something that Nietzsche talks about when a certain stronger instincts kind of come to the fore and really dominate. And it kind of, gives more to King Jared because I feel like he kind of goes by the wayside. Katana talks about him, but you kind of don't get why he was such a great king. But then when you see that, like you'd see how he was so kingly. Like he's so kingly that once Ermac wins the tournament, he finally is able to kind of take over and be kind of like the kingly voice over all those voices. And essentially,
it does make sense because who would rise to take charge? Who would be the one to rise to demonstrate leadership in a chaotic situation like that? Of course, somebody who has that kind of experience, the king. Who else?
Absolutely, for sure. And I've always liked that about both Ermac and Scarlet. Did you have
honestly, there's so much, like the more you analyze it, the more you can really appreciate just how well thought out it is and how it all makes so much sense and how fitting it all is.
Do you like how they did Scarlet in the new game?
Honestly, when they did Scarlet in the new game, I'm not a big fan of retcons ever. I always think that you should just deal with the cards that you were given. Even if you don't like the story, roll with it. You know what I mean? Right. I'm not really a fan of retconning and changing things out. But no, I don't like Scarlet's revised story because it ruins the symmetry that we just talked about before with Ermac and Scarlet. They were both cooked up from the same idea of taking the fans' rumors and putting them in the game. And the fact that Ermac and Scarlet have that is unique to them, we kind of lost that if she's just another one of Shao Kahn's adopted daughters.
Yeah, I mean, people have said those dialogue. Is that canon in the story, though? Like, do they say that in the story mode? I forget that she's an orphan.
Yeah.
Oh,
that is canon.
Okay.
That is the new canon now. So
okay.
Again, I'm not really a fan. I'll document the retcons and I'll talk about them on my channel. It's when they do stuff like that, like Aaron Black or Cabal, when they kind of like contradict what they had just said in the previous game, it's like I don't think you have to do that. And of course, Sindel is like the biggest retcon that's really got people upset.
By the way, that my friend Nick, who can't join us because he's not feeling very well, he actually said he really hates Sindel. So I decided to show him that video of yours because he hadn't seen
really?
Yeah, and he actually said that video made him love Sindel.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what does he prefer then? The old Sindel where she was good or the new Sindel where she's evil?
I think he said he preferred the old one and that he appreciated her more because of how screwed over she's been by the retcon.
Okay. Wow, that's awesome. That is great feedback. Thank you.
No worries.
I really didn't. I didn't think it would even have that effect. I didn't think someone would watch that video and then like Sindel more. But that is amazing that it did that.
I wasn't expecting that either. I'm not sure. I think I was just sending it to him because I'm like, I always believe in challenging someone's beliefs or their preconceptions.
No, you don't.
Sorry?
No, you don't.
I don't do that?
You don't believe in that.
Okay, maybe not.
I'm just challenging you. Sorry.
Okay, I see. Yeah, no, it definitely made him do a complete 180. It's a very good video. So it really, because I mean, a lot of people have complained about that retcon, but I think that's like a comprehensive way of showing why it has such a negative impact on lore.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where whenever you change things, imagine that Sindel was someone's favorite character. I know somebody who got a Sindel tattoo.
And
so imagine what a change like this does for that person. They're like, what are you doing to Sindel? Like it really, And Sindel wasn't like my number one favorite, but I appreciate the lore overall, and I like how she fit into the bigger story. So when they do stuff like that, the narrative kind of falls apart a little bit.
Well, this might be a good segue into the movie because I feel like Mortal Kombat. Well, it's debatable if it's suffering from it or if it's growing from it. But I feel like there's a lot of writers that are kind of hijacking it a little bit. Like
Okay.
it feels like the writer who's. It feels like a lot of writers are taking the source material and they're trying to kind of do their own thing with it, which I don't mind as long as.
Yeah, they have to. They kind of have to do that. Yeah.
But then that's the thing is sometimes I feel like with the Sindel thing, maybe they overstepped a little bit. Like they really wanted to do this twist with Sindel, but then it, like you said, it kind of took her out of fitting into that lore. Wouldn't you agree?
Right. Yeah. The story that had been established previously doesn't seem to hold up. It creates a lot of problems, with how other characters were reacting and what they were doing. So now I guess we have to retcon those events out of existence, and it complicates things a lot. And I know why they did it, because they thought it would simplify. One of the writers, Dominic, he went out and he said, like, when we were trying to find Sindel's voice and we were trying to have her interact with the other characters, we just found that having her twisted and be like a power hungry, it just kind of served that character well, and it seemed to fit. So we rolled with it, and we just said, okay, that's the Sindel then.
Okay. Do you think they'll ever retcon it in the future where she is being somehow mind controlled during that time?
Maybe, because now that we have time travel, they can just kind of reboot whenever they want. So I feel like, yeah, I said before, I'm not really a fan of retcons, but now they just kind of built in a device that allows them to retcon.
Retcon's kind of the point now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, new timeline. And this one, Sindel's good again. Happy, guys?
There you go. So speaking of kind of like new timelines and new iterations of the lore and of Mortal Kombat as a brand, I think this is a good time to kind of start talking about the movie. First off, just completely spoiler-free thoughts. What were your thoughts? I got to see a little bit from the review, but in summation, what were your thoughts on the movie?
Okay, so without spoiling anything, and I'm glad I did the spoiler video already. So now I've kind of got a chance to sort of re-summarize my thoughts and do it in a way that doesn't contain spoilers. I honestly thought that this movie is definitely worth seeing. I think all fans should check it out. If you're a Mortal Kombat fan, watch the movie. Yes, okay, your favorite character might not be in it, or your favorite character might be a little different than you imagined. See it anyway. It's have fun with it. Enjoy it, or at least don't avoid it. At least give it a shot, and maybe it'll be better than you thought. I think this movie, they did deviate from the story, at times, but there were things that they got spot on. And I also think that you kind of have to make some changes. You really don't want the story to feel like, I know this is going to happen, I know this is going to happen, I know this is going to happen. You can watch the movie and not really know. It's a little unpredictable. You don't know exactly how the story is going to unfold. It has the right tone. I think that the characterizations of the characters are great. I think it's not a spoiler if I say who my favorite character is in the movie. It's Kano. I didn't expect to go into the movie with Kano being my new favorite character. That happened. So I think there's like a lot of cool stuff like that. And I think you've seen the movie, right?
Yes, I have. I haven't seen it twice, so I haven't marinated on it as much. But by the way, I want to kind of ironically retcon kind of what I was saying before. Like I shouldn't use the word hijack, that the writers are trying to hijack like the story. They're just trying to do their own thing, right? And I appreciate that. If anything, that we need something new, and we need something that's like an artistic vision and not just sticking slavishly to a source material. So I actually like the movie when it was trying to do that. So I'm not coming to this from like some hardcore fan that's so hardcore, if you deviate, like you suck or whatever, right? I felt like, I don't know. There were definitely things I liked, and it's definitely, like you said, I definitely think it's worth seeing. I just didn't like how they handled it in the end, like the whole product. I just feel like they rushed certain things through. I felt like there were things that could have been left to imagination instead of expositing on it. I get a feeling that they were trying to concentrate on certain storylines, and then producers stepped in to say, hey, you gotta put this guy in, you gotta put this guy in, you gotta flesh out his thing, he's gotta have his character arc. I don't know if that's what happened for sure, because I see Simon McQuid, who's the director, he's also a producer. By the way, I noticed good old Larry, Lawrence Kazanov, is also an executive producer. So I'm not sure the hand he had and everything.
I don't know for sure. I have a feeling that he kind of was on some contracts, and I think that he had to be involved, even if he didn't actually have any responsibility for anything that happened in the movie. I think he's still, I still think he had to be in there.
Oh, okay, I see. So it could be it could be more of like a flagship position, but
I'm not 100% sure though. I'm just kind of speculating a little.
Right. Which is all we can do it. Right. Everything that's behind the scenes, we won't know until people are actually asked about it. Do you think it's better than the 1995 movie?
Oh man, I'm still not 100% sure. It's so hard to evaluate them and compare them. I really think that the 1995 movie, I've been watching it for over 20 years, and then this one I just saw over the last couple of days. So, but as of right now, I do feel like this is a good movie, and I feel like this is, I want to say, tied for first place for best video game movie. And you could see the influence that the old movie had on the new one. Like Kano. I don't think this is a spoiler if I say Kano's Australian still, right? Okay, Kano's been Australian in the games ever since he was Australian in the movie.
Right.
Although, even though that was technically British, whatever. Kano is the way he is because of that movie. And Shang Tsung, he looks the way he looks in this movie because of how he looked in the old movie. He's not this wizened old man like he was in Mortal Kombat 1, the game. He's got a different look to him, and I think this look comes from the old movie. So, the old one definitely had a hand on how the new one was going to go, but there were times where they definitely wanted to do a 180 and do everything the complete opposite. In the old movie, Scorpion and Sub-Zero were mindless henchmen who Sub-Zero didn't even have any speaking lines. And Scorpion was all voiced by Ed Boon and sound effects just exactly like in the game. Okay, that was cool back then, but they were going to do it differently this time. Now, Scorpion and Sub-Zero are sort of the focal point. The rivalry between them was the focal point, not just one line mentioned in passing that they're deadliest of enemies, but slaves under my power. This time you'd actually see that they're deadliest of enemies.
Yeah, I feel like that's when the movie's being its strongest, is when it's focusing on certain storylines, like the Scorpion versus Sub-Zero storyline. I actually wish they would have focused on it more. Are you okay if we go into spoilers now?
Yes.
Yeah, let's go into spoilers. So I think I haven't been watching the 95 movie every couple of years, like it sounds like you have. But as time has gone on, I've kind of appreciated it more because it does. Maximilian, dude, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's more of a fighting.
Definitely.
Yeah, so he made a good point. It's not an R-rated movie, but you kind of forget that because you do have the one monk who gets frozen by Sub-Zero and then shatters into pieces. His severed head falls to Shang Tsung's feet. You have the Scorpion Johnny Cage fight, which can be very graphic without being R-rated.
They figured out a way to have him slice his skull open,
Oh, it's just Goop. I guess they were anticipating our podcast, so it's just Goop, so it's fine for the kids to watch. But I don't know. That movie just feels very clever. Johnny Cage is really great in the movie. I don't want to say we miss Johnny Cage here because they're saving him, obviously. I actually think Cole Young, people are going to hate on Cole Young a lot. I actually don't mind, beyond Louis Tan's performance, I actually don't mind Cole Young and his storyline. I think he's actually more relatable than a Hollywood playboy like Johnny Cage, who was a Jean-Claude Van Damme parody anyways. So I think he's...
How did Lyndon do it? Because Johnny Cage was very relatable in the first film,
Yeah, he was. Yeah, to be fair, he was.
I think maybe it was because of his confusion. Like, what's going on here? This guy's doing this. This guy's doing this. Someone tell me what's happening. I think that really made him like, okay, yeah, someone explain that. Raiden, show up and give us some exposition now. In the new movie, I think people resent Cole because we don't need a new character for that. We had someone to do that.
Yeah, my thinking is, in a way, he is more... I know Lyndon Ashby, he did a great job. And, him being the fish out of water, he was a great proxy. But he's still a larger-than-life character. So I think if you're trying to do, which it sounds like they're trying to do the cinematic universe with Mortal Kombat. If that's what they're trying to... Yeah, and I hope the movie does well because there are things that I thought were good about it. I do see potential. I think giving Cole that kind of everyman relatability makes it so that, you know, the typical audience member or the newcomer can relate to this guy, can relate to him wanting to protect his family. Now, is the whole family trope being overused in action movies these days with Vin Diesel and Fast and Furious and all this? Yeah, it is, but it is, I feel like it's subdued enough that it wasn't obnoxious. I actually like the Cole Young storyline because of that. I like that, you know, he's this washed up has-been MMA fighter, because a lot of
Johnny Cage was a washed-up actor in Mortal Kombat Legacy. I mean, look,
Yeah,
all I
that's
know
true.
is if we did have like a Jean-Claude Van Damme kind of character who could tell Cole off, I think what he would say is, go home and be a family man.
Yeah, I guess he'd quote Guile.
Oh, you got that. Okay.
Of course. I didn't go into it, but I actually have a history with fighting games. But yeah,
Awesome.
I have a lot of stories from that. Probably be a podcast for another time. But yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. I think if they do a sequel, Johnny Cage will definitely, you know, uplift it. I think they're just saving that type of larger than life character. I'd love to see what's his name from Community. He voiced Johnny Cage in Scorpion's Revenge. Why am I blanking on his name? You know who I'm talking about, right?
I do. I know who you're talking about. He did such a great job in that movie, in that animated movie. It was so great. Yeah, Johnny Cage. You think he could do a live action Johnny Cage too?
He is a little older now, but I think he can pull it off.
Yeah.
Like, he can look like he's in his early or even late 20s if he wants.
Do you think he could look like he would be a good partner for Sonya? Like, could you see them coupling?
Oh, I guess because she is pretty young looking, but
You know,
I don't
with
know.
makeup and CG.
Yeah, that's true. Imagine if they de-aged him.
I could see that.
What would be fitting for that actor just because he played that? Have you watched Community?
Not in a long time.
So yeah, he has that thing with Alison Brie's character, and he's like, at first it sounds like he's just in his early 30s, and you know she's 18, but it's not seen as weird because it's seen like as a special bond they have. So it wouldn't be so crazy if he kind of consummated that here with Sonya Blade, but I guess we'll have to see.
I think if they played them as they were about the same age, that would probably be better. You know, when Mortal Kombat 1 came out, I remember all the characters' ages in the bio. Sonya was 26, Johnny Cage was 29.
Yeah,
So
I think
that seemed like it could work.
I think they can pull it off. I like that actor for that.
You remember the rule? You're supposed to like add 7 years and divide by 2.
What for Hollywood pairings?
Yeah, no, for any pairings.
Oh, okay. I'll keep that. I'm single, so I'll keep that advice in mind, I guess.
Yeah, well, you're single, ready to mingle. Yeah, that's the rule.
For sure, I should definitely use some Mortal Kombat pickup lines. That'll definitely
get over here.
Might get in trouble for that one. So yeah, but so I have a background in not in MMA, but I train jiu-jitsu. Actually, I was gonna get back into training jiu-jitsu when COVID hit. Like I did my 2 classes back, and then COVID shut everything down. So I thought that was pretty funny. My
Perfect
friend Nick,
timing.
exactly. My friend Nick was still doing jiu-jitsu, so he's like starved for it, like really badly. But I feel like because we train jiu-jitsu, we kind of end up training with these like lower level fighters, right? And nobody really talks about the lower level fighters. Everybody's obsessed with George St. Pierre and who I don't know, Khabib and Conor McGregor, who I guess is kind of Kano. How familiar are you with UFC at all?
I know the name McGregor.
Okay, McGregor. Do you see similarities between McGregor and how Kano is portrayed in this movie?
I'm not that familiar with McGregor.
Okay,
I can't really
okay.
comment.
Okay, fair enough.
I know the name McGregor.
Actually, as soon as I said his name, I kind of thought about Kano. He even has like the same look with the beard, and like they're kind of both ginger.
Yeah.
That is kind of interesting. But yeah, there's not enough of a spotlight on the lower level guys. Like, so I'll give you an example. George St. Pierre is arguably the greatest fighter of all time. He came out of Quebec, Canada. Around the same time he was coming up, there was 2 other fighters coming up. There was David Loiseau, who was a good friend of his, and Jonathan Goulet. David Loiseau was always kind of like hovering at that championship level, but he couldn't quite get over the hump. So that's kind of one example. And then you got Jonathan Goulet, who was such a badass that like even with like a really bad chin, like he was able to get knocked out very easily. Even with that, he was still able to put together some really awesome wins. And he actually started his career very badly because he would travel around, do these fights on short notice like Cole Young, and somehow, I don't know, somehow make it through without a corner. Like he didn't even have a corner, any cornerman in his corner, and it's kind of crazy. And so as I'm watching this movie, I'm trying to, because I always try to see a work of art from the artist's perspective, and I think what they were trying to do was, you don't want George St. Pierre with his fancy fancy fight camps, training camps, his fancy trainers coming in, going into this like really dangerous, really crazy Mortal Kombat tournament. You want the word warrior. You want the guy who's doing all this crazy stuff, fighting for $200 on 8 hours notice. And I think that's where they were going with that. Like, do you kind of see that now that I say that, or no?
Yeah, a little bit, because those guys kind of have to work harder to, to kind of catch up. So they're a little bit more motivated, I think. It's right. They're down and they're on their luck. If they were going to make it, they really have to find and dig deep, and that's kind of what he had to do. Right,
and like if you ever watch George St. Pierre's like interviews or fights, he's again greatest fighter of all time, but he kind of has his, he has his little quirks, he always feels very pressured to do a fight. Like if he had to fight for the sake of Earthrealm, he'd probably crack under the pressure. But someone like Cole, who just cares about his family, is gonna like dig deep and get his Arcana and like get things done, right? So I actually listen. I'm in the minority, but I actually appreciated Cole Young's storyline when I kind of framed it in that sense.
Well, what do you think about the fact that he's sort of going to be used to recruit more fighters? So that seems like he's going to have to take a back seat and not do the fighting himself. He's going to have to recruit more people.
Well, he can be a recruiter and still fight himself, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, he could, but I don't think that's going to be his role in the next film.
Okay,
if there is another film, it just seems like his job is going to be to get the bigger, better fighters, people who are more advanced than he is.
I still think that could be fun. I think the way you can write it is he's still trying to train these guys, and he doesn't have as much to worry about because I guess he's invulnerable right now. Well, sort of. I'm sure someone could like get his number and pierce through that armor. I mean, Sub-Zero did a pretty good job in this movie, but yeah, I think he could become kind of a mentor type, and I think you want that type of a backyard MMA guy to be your mentor in the movie.
I'll be honest. I really liked the actor. I thought Louis Tan did a great job. Like when Kano, there's a scene, now that we're doing spoilers, right? There's a scene when Kano unlocks his Arcana and he finds out that he has a freaking laser beam that he can shoot out of his eye. He was so happy too. It was like there was like a look of pure joy on Kano's face, and it was so funny because you don't really see Kano as like a happy guy when you play the games, but there it was, and like who wouldn't be in that moment? And then they kind of showed Cole, and he looked like miserable. He's like, man, I can't find mine, and he has his. This is not fair. You could just, without him saying anything, you could see it in his face. He conveyed so much expression. I thought Louis Tan did such a good job as Cole. But I still really didn't care for that whole storyline at all, and I just think it was undeserved, and I don't think that character was needed. I thought the movie would have better been served without him, and I think Louis Tan is such a good actor that they should have found something different for him because they kind of set him up to be hated by the fans. And I know that's not what they were trying to do, but I feel like when you take someone like Cole and you're going to make Scorpion and Sub-Zero's rivalry sort of on the marketing and on the poster and like the big grand finale, and it's all about Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and then you make Cole Young the big lead and you put him in there in that finale that we all want. Like, we love Scorpion versus Sub-Zero. We don't want Scorpion and Sub-Zero and now Poochie, right?
By the way, before I forget to mention this, when you did your trailer analysis on the first trailer, and his daughter says he was born with it, I thought the exact same thing. Maybe he was born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline.
Man.
I love that you made. Yeah, I don't. It's something with the way she like delivers it. I think she had that commercial in mind or something.
That commercial. I feel like people around the world aren't gonna get that, but I'm so glad they had that in Canada, so you get it. Like that '90s Maybelline commercial.
Right, for sure. By the way, that daughter, I thought did like a pretty good job. For what it's worth. Like she obviously wasn't a focus, but I thought she was pretty well for like a child actress.
Here's something else I noticed. You watch the trailer, like it's a birthmark. What do you mean? He was born with it. When you watch the movie, he was born with it. What do you mean? It's a birthmark. They totally switched it up.
Yeah, I guess they did. I think I guess it's just the way trailers work. But yeah,
I love the fact like that when you watch the trailer, there's that juxtaposition of Jax fighting Sub-Zero and Sonya kind of recapping what happened, and they made it sound like Sub-Zero was their target. Like, that's totally what I thought happened. Oh, they fought Sub-Zero in Brazil. When you watch the movie, no, they didn't fight Sub-Zero in Brazil. They never heard of Sub-Zero before. They totally fooled me with that.
Yeah, it's kind of
This is a side issue. This is like, let me go off into a tangent here. Have you ever seen the misleading trailers that people cut on YouTube? Like, they'll do a commercial for like a horror movie but make it look like a comedy, or they'll do a commercial, like a trailer for a comedy but make it look like a horror movie. Like they did that with Mary Poppins, the horror cut. It's so funny how they can mislead people with the trailer. It's an art form.
Yeah, trailers, you can really play with editing and anything you do in post, right? Actually, I think there was a lot they did in post with this movie. So you know how like one of the keys to Cole beating Goro is the uppercut?
Yeah.
So they set that up in a prior scene where the daughter says, you should have went for the uppercut. And I'm thinking, no, the only reason he lost the fight is because he couldn't get the armbar. It had nothing to do with an uppercut. And I realized the daughter's mouth was off screen both times she says uppercut. So I think they actually put that in post.
Oh man, yeah. When you're a real cinephile, you can catch stuff like that. That's a really good point.
Yeah, my only cinephile like history is watching a lot of Red Letter Media. Do you watch those guys?
Yeah, I thought their review of Star Wars was so good. The way they did a review of the Star Wars prequels. It takes just as long to watch as watching the Star Wars prequels themselves. It was so entertaining and so worth it.
Sounds like our last podcast on Evangelion. The movie End of Evangelion, it's only an hour and a half or hour and 40 minutes. Our podcast is 2 hours and a half.
Oh, yeah. You take more time dissecting it than it does take to watch it. But it's fun because you learn new things. You learn new things from the dissection that you do from watching the actual thing.
Absolutely. And that's why I always find it's a lot better to talk to someone about it, to socialize it, because then you think of things you wouldn't have thought of if you didn't talk through it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like when I was watching the movie and I saw like Cole's Arcana, his superpower was armor. I'm like, okay, that's kind of a weird power. But I was reading people online, read people's comments, and they're saying, oh my God, his power is literally plot armor. That's like, okay, that's the funniest way of putting it I've ever heard of. And then, my buddy Scott Howell, we were watching it, and he says to me, wow, look at the way his armor is heating up. It kind of reminds me of Jax's arms in MK11. Like, that's how they work. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's true. Except, Jax's arms kind of power up the more he hits you, and this armor kind of powers up the more he gets hit.
Right. Well, speaking of Jax's arms, I was a little disappointed that it's a product of his Arcana. I was kind of hoping they'd keep to the cybernetic thing, because I feel like that. I was kind of
disappointed that the monks are high tech now.
I know. What? I thought that was weird.
Yeah. I was. There are a couple weird things that I think it could have been tweaked.
Right, like that. So that's what to bring back the point I brought up before. That's what feels like they were rushing things, and maybe these were like reshoots. Like they weren't. I think the director's original vision was to focus on Cole Young, focus on Scorpion Sub-Zero, and then maybe a little bit Kano and the Black Dragon. And then the studio kind of stepped in, or someone stepped in and said, hey, you need to flesh out Jax. You need to give Sonya Blade, the actress wants more to do. You need to give her a character arc. I don't know if that's what happened. I'm just speculating. But the reason I think that way is because sometimes it feels like they're rushing through a lot of information and a lot of exposition. Like all of a sudden, Jax is in the Shaolin temple and he has like Shaolin arms. So that's kind of why. Do you see now what I'm trying to say with that? Like that's why I felt a little rushed.
Yeah, I don't know if I got the sense that it was rushed from that. I know what you're saying. When I saw it, so I see Sonya there and she's like, well, what else can I do? And they're just like, well, just be patient. The monks are going to source every realm and see what we can do for them. And it's like, okay, so the next time we see them, they've done something. I was kind of okay with the pacing of it. I just think they should have changed the method. It should have been Sonya's like, I need to do something for him. Send me back. We have something. I've got our top men can be on this. You know what I mean? Make it special forces tech. They made some decisions there that I just can't wrap my head around, and it wouldn't have taken any extra time. It wouldn't have affected the budget at all. If you're not even going to show it, if it's going to happen off screen, give a different on-screen explanation for it.
Exactly. And I don't think every fighter had to have the birthmark. I don't think every fighter needed an Arcana. I think you could have just gave like Sonya, like you said, gave Jax his arms, gave Sonya her like energy ring blades on her arms. So
What
like,
would Jax's Arcana have been if he didn't get metal arms? If his arms hadn't been cut off, then what would his Arcana have been? What would have happened to him?
does he need an Arcana though? Like, can't he just be along for the ride? That's what I was thinking, but I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. And I wonder other things too, like Raiden, does he have an Arcana?
By the
What
way,
about the Outworlders? Do they have Arcanas?
yeah, actually, yeah, that is a good point. Maybe they might explain it in a sequel.
I would have liked to have seen more on the bad guys' stories, because if is Sub-Zero from Earthrealm or is he from Outworld? Is he a traitor?
That's a good point.
Actually, you know what I mean? I would have liked to have seen more time spent on those. I would honestly watch this movie again if they made like a 3 or 4 hour thing like they did with the Justice League Snyder Cut. If they could just expand it more and let us see, who is Natara? What's her deal? Why is she serving Shang Tsung? You know what I mean? What's Goro's backstory? What's his relationship with Shang Tsung? Right. I want to see that stuff fleshed out, because it's kind of hard for me to, when you watch the good guys and the bad guys, like they had more setup in the old movie. You know, you kind of got a chance to see them in the old movie. You kind of knew who all the bad guys were, especially Kano. I feel like he had the biggest connection with Sonya there. They probably could have worked on that a little bit more. You know?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Kano has less of a connection to Sonya than he does in this movie. I mean, less of a connection to Sonya in this movie than he does in the '95 one. I feel.
Well, yeah, because he didn't kill Sonya's partner this time.
Right.
Yeah, but that's kind of. I liked that. Okay, I actually really liked that, because it gave some different story. It gave them a different direction that they could go. You know, they're still rivals. They still hate each other. Sonya had captured him. Like when we first see Kano, he's already been tied up. Sonya already has some adventures with him. She's already got one over on him. I kind of was like digging it. And then they didn't hate each other too much. She could still say, I've got access to $2 million, and it's yours if you can get us to Raiden's temple. It was like, all right, I'll do it. That never could have worked in the old movie. I don't know. Yeah. I thought it was fun. I thought it was like, okay, here's the characters that we know. She's believable. They're both believable characters, despite how over-the-top funny Kano is. It worked. They really pulled it off. They pulled off something amazing with those scenes.
Yeah, I guess they did. I think that it would have been lame if they just rehashed what happened in the '95 movie. They did do that in Scorpion's Revenge, which I guess that's what made it feel a little less original when they did it there. So going back to Sub-Zero, how you feel like he wasn't fleshed out, I feel like we don't understand his motivation. I think we need to know his motivation, because he comes across, the best I can do is when he's talking to Hanzo Hasashi's family, he sounds like he sounds like an Asian Joffrey, right? Like he's highborn. You said in your review that, you know, he seems very well traveled, very highly educated, like highborn.
Yes.
Yeah, like highborn people are. And I think that's what they were going with it, is he's basically a warlord he's a spoiled warlord who became a psychopath as a result. But I wanted to see that Mortal Kombat Conquest type of backstory. Like, why is he a murderous psychopath? Why does he only care about blood and getting power?
Well, and also Hanzo Hasashi knew his name. He was yelling like Bihan, like he knew who was responsible for all this. So they did have a feud going for a long time. And I would have liked to have known a little bit more about that, you know, like why does he want to exterminate all of Hanzo Hasashi's bloodline? Also, I didn't mention this in the review, but it's just something I've been thinking about. Hanzo should have been the family name, but here it was Hasashi. Like if you pay attention to some of the dialogue, Raiden says like, "Oh, you're the last of the Hasashi bloodline." It should have been you're the last of the Hanzo bloodline if you want to go by the Asian rules for last names.
Right. Yeah.
All right, that's a minor detail. I'm just saying, I would like to have seen more of that. Oh, and Scorpion had 2 kids in this one. You know, in the traditional Mortal Kombat lore, it's always been Scorpion will never get to know his wife and child, right? He left them behind from his former life. Now it's 2 children. So that was a little bit interesting of a deviation. Not a big deal, and it did make the way for Scorpion's bloodline to continue after him. But yeah, I would like to have seen what interaction did Scorpion and Sub-Zero have with each other in the past? Was he hiding from Sub-Zero? Did he come to this place to get away? Was he no longer a Shiryu? Did he renounce his life as a ninja? Because he didn't seem like a ninja anymore.
I have a feeling the script has more of a backstory on it, and maybe they even shot the scenes, but
I think there are some deleted scenes that would have an answer, and I think if we get the movie on Blu-ray, hopefully they'll go into it more. I want to absorb as much as I can about it. Honestly, I really did enjoy the movie, despite the fact that I'm complaining about Cole Young, and despite the fact that I think the movie would have been better served had he not been in the film at all than the way they did it. Given those two extremes, I would have picked the one without him. And yet, I like the movie enough, I'm engaged enough that I would love to see more special features and get into it even more.
So what do you think about the fact that Bi-Han does actually kill Scorpion's family?
Yeah. So they deviated a lot from it, because in the original game from Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, it was always Sub-Zero kills Scorpion, Quan Chi kills the family. Right. And in some of the adaptations, they've changed that up a little bit. I don't like it when they make Quan Chi really is the one who killed everybody. He was disguised as Sub-Zero. I've never liked that. So I appreciate the fact that this is the Scorpion Sub-Zero rivalry that we wanted. Having Sub-Zero be the one to kill the family just intensifies their rivalry. Although now they've kind of taken Quan Chi out of the picture completely, which I think they could probably insert him back into it because there's so much we don't know.
Or they could do something even worse and retcon it in that it was.
If they say it was actually Quan Chi after all, oh no, I'm out.
You'll be done.
I'll be done.
I personally always liked the misunderstanding. I'm glad they didn't rehash it, but I always liked that they did that, because for me, I'm a big fan of tragedy, and I like that the idea that Scorpion hates Sub-Zero more than he needs to, just because he doesn't know he's not the real killer. And it kind of just adds to the tragedy of like kind of this cycle of violence and vengeance, right? Although in the original lore, Sub-Zero does kill him, so he still has a reason to go after him. But at least then, like, Bi-Han isn't a disgusting Joffrey type. He's just kind of a, he's got that. I always envisioned him as having that Mortal Kombat Conquest type of storyline. He's just been bred to be a killer. He
has been, and that's true. Like in the games too. Like his father was a Lin Kuei, and his father before him, and like that's the family business. And in Chinese culture, you really do what your parents say, or you get a beating.
Right. No. Especially if you're a Lin Kuei.
Especially if you're in a clan of assassins, you get beating or worse.
Exactly. Or you get cybernized.
And Sub-Zero is like really well studied. Like you got to get good grades or you get a beating. Like I think that fits his character in the new movie. I really like how he spoke multiple languages and Hanzo didn't. You really got a feeling that there was a big class distinction between the two. Sub-Zero was high class, Scorpion was low class. That without them ever saying it, that message came through loud and clear.
And see, that's why I think the whole Cole Young thing, being a low-level MMA fighter with potential, really made sense, that it's the two low-class guys taking on the high-class Sub-Zero at the end.
Yeah, I never thought about it.
Yeah.
So you just don't want Johnny Cage to be the high-class guy saving everyone, saving the day for everyone.
Yeah, well, he's kind of all over the place. He could be, they could make him like low-born, but he becomes high-class through his hard work and his star power, right? So. Right,
or they could make him like a down-and-out actor, Hasn't worked since Power Rangers.
Yeah, I guess so. I want to move on to Raiden. I found Raiden very lazy and miserable in this movie. What did you think?
Okay. I was surprised that he had. I wasn't surprised they made him Asian. I was a little bit surprised with the how strong his accent was. It sounded a little bit like he was struggling with the language, and right. I don't picture Raiden as struggling with anything. He's like an all-powerful god. So. Right. That was a little bit surprising to me, but that's really not a big deal, because I still thought he was a great Raiden. In the games, I've really, really come to enjoy Richard Epcar's performance as Raiden. So that's kind of why I bring it up. Like he did sound like he was straining to speak at times, but I think what you're really asking me about is what do I think about how he was used in the movie and what he did with the characters and all that. And I think Raiden, he came across as very disappointed in the fighters that he had. But just like Liu Kang and Kung Lao when they were teasing Kano, I think he said exactly what he needed to say to push them to achieve their best.
Okay, I guess that's a good way to look at it. The reason why I found him lazy was because Shang Tsung, I almost said Shang-Chi. Shang Tsung has that he has that line about, oh, the elder gods are too lazy to take care of, like, to get in my way.
He said the
And
other gods are too lazy to stop me. Raiden's the only one who does anything.
right. But the thing
So
is,
look, if you've got a really lazy family, and they're all and you're the only one working like 15 hours a week, as far as you're concerned, you're the hardworking one here.
right. So I guess it's not that he's lazy. He just comes across entitled in a way, like he wants more from his fighters, or he's just giving them tough love.
I don't know. I see him in that cave, and I see Liu Kang and Kung Lao, and they've already got their arcanas. I feel like he's working actually pretty hard with them, and he's got all this like cool high-tech stuff. Like he built a force field. There's like some weird looking contraption behind him, and his lightning powers it. Like, okay, they built something that he's like this really wise old god, and he knows things, and he's training them. I guess he's training them in the ways of technology, which I know I said a few minutes ago I didn't like that. I don't like it for Jax's cybernetic arms, but I do like this unique, weird thing that you'd never see anywhere else in the world, because it wouldn't make sense for anybody else. It only makes sense for this one particular spot that Raiden dwells. And I thought that was like really cool. So I don't think he's lazy. I think he's actually training people, and I think he's actually building them up, and I think he's actually teaching them skills, and I think he's getting stuff done over here. And I think he says what he needs to say in order to get the best out of his people, and I think he knows what he's doing here. I think this is the most competent Raiden we've seen in a long time.
So yeah, I guess so. Not I guess. Well, when you say it that way, that he's kind of being the tough love guy. He's kind of teasing them the same way. He's talking trash to them the same way that Liu Kang and Lao did with Kano. I think that makes him definitely more of a competent mentor. My thing is these other chosen ones. Why isn't he like recruiting them like he did in the old movie? Why isn't he like trying to train them? Why is it that they have to go to him? Or is that just part of his master plan, do you think?
Okay, right. Like Sonya encountered somebody with an arcana, and she's got this wall of weird, and she's trying to put this whole thing together, and she looks like a crazy conspiracy theorist with all this stuff. Why wouldn't Raiden just appear before her?
She's a different type of anti-masker.
Why wouldn't Raiden show up and say, "Look, you've hit upon something. This goes deeper than you know. Let me show you everything. Come with me." Why wouldn't he do that?
Yeah. Well, do they answer that in the movie though? I've only watched it once, so I don't know.
No, they don't answer that.
Yeah.
Sonya wanted to go to his temple. She knew his name. She's like, "You know where Raiden's temple is?" Like, she was trying to figure this out. Kano knew. I mean, Kano had apparently smuggled weapons there before.
Right. I guess he was like really riding on Kano. Maybe he just had some sort of vision for the storyline Kano's gonna have. I don't know. They've made his powers kind of vague, so maybe they're leaving the door open so that he can explain that in the next movie.
Yeah, I guess you could always argue that Raiden should be doing more. But I do like the fact that in this movie he seemed to do a very good job with guiding his people into where they needed to go, except for Kung Lao. That was like the one guy that it didn't end well for him.
Speaking of Kung Lao, I found his kill of Nitara, even though it was a great gore kill, I was a little disappointed because I was hoping there'd be a bit of a fight first. Instead, he just kind of gets her with his one maneuver.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it was over a little quick.
Because they set up Nitara, and I was actually really happy to see her. I think she's like really under-celebrated. I want to see more of Nitara, but then and I thought the actress did great for the little bit of screen time she had. But then, she gets that little kill and she gets sawed in half, like just like that.
It was a great death scene, so I guess I could overlook that fight. I'm more interested in knowing more about her backstory and, what is she fighting for? Because in the games, she wasn't really a servant to Shang Tsung or Shao Kahn, even though she was from Outworld. She was more like, hey, I come from my own realm, Viternus, and I remember what it was like before it was merged with Outworld. I want to go smash the orb and separate it and get my realm back. She never spent time serving Shang Tsung and Shao Kahn in the game, so it would be interesting to see what do they do with her? What's her motivation? What's she really all about?
Because as far as I can tell in the movie, she seems to be in love with Shang Tsung, I guess, or one of his mistresses. I feel like that's implied.
Huh. I did not pick up on that.
Okay.
I totally missed the signals.
Well, because Shang Tsung talks about how beautiful she is, and they have kind of they kind of hold hands for a second. Again, I've only seen it once, so maybe I just filled in the gaps, but
maybe you're right though.
That would be interesting. Shang Tsung's never had a love interest in these movies. I think he could use one. I think the bad
he
guy
did on MK Conquest. Omegas.
Wait, are you talking about the Jade type girl with the green?
Omegas. You remember like the witch?
I don't think I haven't watched all of Conquest. I've seen some episodes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not going to spoil it for you anymore. Let's just say that there is a love interest for Shang Tsung.
Okay, and it's not the woman that's trying to take advantage of him.
And if you like tragic backstories, you're going to like it.
Okay, I have to check it out for sure.
And you check that out, and I'll check out Showdown in Little Tokyo.
Absolutely. Hey, by the way, Conquest, I heard that there's an ancestor to Johnny Cage in it. We're going off topic from the movie, but like, have you noticed that in one episode?
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate. I mean, I think we would just figured. I think we would just made that up. Like, and I know who you're talking about. His name is Tomas, but there's no reason to think he's an ancestor to Cage.
Okay, you think that's just like a fun fan theory?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, okay. Here's a good question. How do you think this movie compares to Scorpion's Revenge?
Oh yeah. All right. So I like it that it's R-rated. They're both R-rated. The violence is not as over the top here as it was in that animated movie. So
right.
The funny parts are funnier here. I guess Scorpion's Revenge is cool. I think Scorpion's Revenge built up Scorpion a little bit too much especially like near the end with the final scene, like the grand finale. And this movie built up Cole Young too much. So I guess they both kind of have the same fault, in my opinion, as that they're building up the wrong things. Although it's, what are you going to do? They both get a lot of stuff right. There's both a lot of fun. They both even found a way to bring in Natara. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, that is interesting. She's more of a cameo in Scorpion's Revenge, but she does have a little interaction with Johnny Cage.
Right. They both find different ways to get rid of Jax's arms. They both take Scorpion and Sub-Zero's rivalry in different directions. Did it happen today or did it happen centuries past? Is Quan Chi responsible or Sub-Zero responsible? They both take the same kind of themes and just take them in different directions. I love Mortal Kombat so much that I'll keep watching pretty much any direction they want to take it in. And I think as long as they do a good job, it's fun to watch. I think the tone is right for the new movie, and I think the tone is right for Scorpion's Revenge. Even though I do have some qualms with both of them, I still enjoy them, and we'll definitely watch them.
So to go back to the violence, yeah, it's definitely more believable in this movie. Scorpion's Revenge was it got too cartoonish for me to the point where like none of the violence has impact because everything, there's just limbs flying everywhere.
Right.
In this movie, when someone's head explodes, it explodes. Like it's not just
impact. Right. By not doing it so often, by not having so much of it, it's really, I guess less is more in this case.
Exactly. And you touched on tone. I want to touch more on aesthetic. Okay. I feel like one of the things that I thought was really interesting going into this movie is it seemed like they wanted to take from what I call the bootleg MK verse. That 15-minute video that Kevin, I can't pronounce his last name, but the Takerin, yeah. The 15-minute thing Kevin Takerin did, it felt like
Rebirth.
Rebirth. It took a lot from that. They wanted to make it more gritty. Obviously, they didn't go with the whole, if it was set in the real world sort of thing. But what do you think of that? Do you think they were taking a lot of that and they're going to move forward with kind of that more gritty, I want to say realistic sort of take?
I think that Rebirth was, Rebirth kind of turned into Legacy. Like that was sort of his pitch to Warner Brothers. Like I could make a cool Mortal Kombat thing for you guys, and it got him the job. And recently, footage released of what the third season would have been like, even though they canceled it. And I think it kind of simulated a lot of demand. Like, hey, we want that. We want a season 3 released. They would have called it Generations. But it's like, yeah, Warner Brothers, you should release that. figure out the licensing crap, whatever went wrong, and make this happen, because Legacy was a fun thing to watch. I think where Legacy made its impact, I think where Kevin Tankerin made his impact is not so much with Rebirth as it is with Legacy. And I think that you see it with Scorpion and Sub-Zero's feud here taking place 500 years ago. That's how Kevin Tankerin wrote it, and that kind of made its mark here. And I think it also, the same story, even more so in MK Legends Scorpion's Revenge, where Quan Chi had a bigger hand in it. It was Quan Chi disguised as Sub-Zero. That was, again, Kevin Tankerin's idea. So I think you can sort of see where, with each iteration of Mortal Kombat, with each adaptation that they make, you can kind of see where one project kind of sets the tone and says, okay, we like that. We're going to use it for the next thing.
Right, and it creates a kind of continuity of tone and aesthetic sort of thing. So
yes,
yeah,
yes, but especially feudal Japan, being the center for the Scorpion Sub-Zero rivalry. I think that was definitely where that came from.
For sure. Did you have any other topics you wanted to talk about with the movie?
Okay, so I know we're gonna get into the music a little bit. I think that, CC Shadow, who's the co-founder of MortalKombatOnline.com, he pointed it out to me that the music in the new movie is really not that memorable the way it is in the old film. When you hear those songs from the old movie, the soundtrack, you can pinpoint exactly what scene they're tied to. When you hear like the Goro versus Art Lean song, when you hear the one from the nightclub where Sonya was after that guy saying, "Where's Kano?" Yeah, the music really pops in that movie, and in the new one, it just doesn't. They just went a different direction with it. I think they made a mistake. The best song, everyone's favorite song, was basically a remaster of the original Mortal Kombat song that everybody likes, Techno Syndrome.
Yeah, it's strange. A lot of fans are just kind of scratching their head. Everybody likes that techno stuff. They use it in trailer material for both MK11 and this movie, and they don't use it in the movie. It's very weird.
No, wait, they did use it in the movie. It was in the grand finale.
Yeah, but they only used it for 2 seconds in the Sonya fight, and then they used it for the credits.
Yes.
But they didn't. Yeah, so that's more what I'm talking about. Is they don't use it for like the.
It's underutilized. Okay, yeah. I got you. Yeah, I mean, look, it is what it is. I guess the only other point that I wanted to make would be about the actors and their believability. Everything was totally believable the whole time. You really thought that mother in the beginning was worried for her kids, Scorpion, Hanzo's wife. She was, she had every right to be. You have this feeling that Sub-Zero is this cold-blooded killer, this emotionless guy. He is. You really believe Sonya. She seems like a really tough woman. Jax, he seems like a tough guy too. He's genuinely surprised when he is asking Cole about his birthmark. He's like, "Wait, you were born with it? Really?" But I thought you killed a guy to get it.
Right.
Yeah. He didn't want to say it in front of his family, but he was trying to ask about it without, accusing him. You can see that he was being careful with his words. You see in Cole's face that he wants a superpower. You see how happy Kano is when he gets them. Everybody just seems believable every step of the moment. I thought the acting was the best.
I did like Kano's performance. I feel like the performances otherwise were a little, don't hate me, but I feel like they were a little weak. I don't know, like Louis Tan, he took a while. I think he's a good physical actor. I think where it took him time to like really get a hold of the character was in line delivery. Because in the first half of the movie, the way he delivers some lines is just not as convincing, but when he gets his powers, he's a lot more confident. So I guess in that sense, just like Cole becomes more confident, so does the actor. And he's good in the last scene when he's going off to recruit Johnny Cage. So I think he's going to get better with the confident mentor role. At least I'm hoping.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, we'll see what they do with that. I'm kind of hoping that they realize that Cole wasn't people's favorite, and maybe they'll just kind of take him out of it. I said this in my review with Scott and with Fatal Cade, but I'll say it again here. They kind of set Cole up for failures to be hated by the fans, which is unfortunate because now we're dealing with the real actor. But
yeah,
they did this with Devora in MKX by having her be the one to kill Molina, and then they did it again in MK11 by having her be the one to kill Scorpion. Here's this new character, and you're shoehorning them in these like really high stakes scenes with everyone's fan favorites, and you're just gonna make the people hate the character when you do stuff like that.
What if he does become like a character in Mortal Kombat 11 though?
Then I think that's gonna make people hate it even more.
Okay.
You just can't win at this point. I think if they had made it laid back, like I think if Art Lean became a character, nobody.
Yeah. I guess that could have been a good callback. So speaking of the fights, what did you think was the best fight scene, or the best fight? Let's put it that way.
Okay, the best fight. How about when Liu Kang was doing all those foot sweeps on Kano?
That was pretty funny because he kept falling for the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought? Like when you actually play Mortal Kombat and you just do foot sweep, foot sweep, foot sweep, foot sweep, you'd think, oh, this would be boring if they fought like this in a movie, and they made it work. It wasn't boring at all. It was great.
So I'm a moron because I totally didn't get that. Like now that you say it, okay, that made so much more sense. To be fair, my background's more with like the newer games, like Mortal Kombat 9 and 11. But
you can still fight like that too.
Yeah, that's true.
But people will catch on quickly.
Yeah. But what was I gonna say? I actually really liked the Goro fight between him and Cole. Like I actually thought that was a really effective. I thought because the thing is, I feel like the intros of characters was really uneven in this movie. Some of them are really weak, and some of them are really amazing. Like Goro's entrance both times,
you see him with the shadow.
Exactly. So even if you're a newcomer, you know something's up. Then you see this four-armed beast like come out of this garage, this shack, and it's a really good entrance. And then you are actually legitimately worried for Cole and his family.
Yeah.
Goro's a very imposing presence. And then when Cole gets his powers, you're like, okay, like at least for me, like I was won over by Cole. Were you won over by Cole a little bit when he got those powers and he sliced his hand off, gutted him?
No, because again, this just feels like he didn't earn the right to be the one to kill Goro. Like here's this new character and you're pushing him in all these high stakes situations. That's the kind of thing that backfired on Cole. Oh. Sorry. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Like you make him the one to kill Goro. It was cool though, seeing Goro, like back to your point about how cool was Goro. Like, yeah, seeing him in that scene, in that setting, like, oh shoot, he's here on Earth. He went through a portal, now he's here in our territory. And there's this family that stands no chance against him. Like, if he wanted to kill them, if he made that his goal, they would just be dead. Yeah, that was a cool scene.
For sure, and I'll stop trying to push Cole on you. I feel like I'm never going to win that fight. Not with you.
No. You have your opinion. I have mine. I don't think either one of us is going to budge on that.
Yeah. So obviously the Sub-Zero fight in the gym. Actually, I really like that it was in the gym. You said in your review that it has the Mortal Kombat font.
Yes.
The gym name. And what did I want to say about the gym? Now I forget. It had this. That's what I wanted to say. We talked about WMAC Masters before. I feel like this movie was like a really well done episode of WMAC Masters. Am I crazy for thinking that? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think you are crazy for thinking that. I think it's a bit of a stretch, but one thing I liked on that show was ninjas leave the dome.
Well, I just because I thought about the scenes where they have their dramatic stuff in the gym. And it just made me think of that and like, what if the ninjas broke into the gym scenes and just started fighting? But
yeah, well, the cool thing about WMAC Masters was like the way all the guys are sort of like, they're working out, but they're kind of relaxing. They're just talking. It's downtime, right? They're not in the middle of a fight. That's kind of where they go to do all their socialization. And here, I don't know. It wasn't like a really kind of relaxing, let's just hang out and chill kind of a gym, Those scenes were not like that. There was always tension. There's always a lot more tension here. So it didn't really feel like that. But now that you pointed out, yeah, having the gym be a setting, I don't think it's a throwback to WMAC Masters, but now I kind of get how it recreates that feeling for you. Yes.
Right. I don't know, just the way the story was told, I've been watching a couple episodes and it just reminds me of how it's done. And I've also noticed the film because there's been a trend in martial arts movies in recent years where they try to make it more MMA-like, which I appreciate because I'm a fan of MMA. Yeah. But this movie felt, even though they had Cole Young, the MMA fighter, it felt like they were getting away from the MMA stuff and they were trying to make it more fantastical, Wing Chun, flying without the zip lines, the flying zip line sort of stuff, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So I appreciated that, and that made me think of WMAC Masters as well. So I might, yeah. Yeah, what else? What else to talk about this movie? I don't know. I'm curious where they go with it for sure. I definitely like the movie more now that I've talked to you, and like you kind of bring up some good points. But you definitely convinced me of some things. You know what? We should talk about Reptile though. I thought they didn't do him. They didn't do him quite as dirty as I thought they were. Like he only loses because he loses basically to 3 fighters on one. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but every time Reptile's in anything, he kind of gets killed like a jobber. And, it kind of sucks to see because he's like one of the OGs and he's like a very dangerous, imposing character. I
definitely felt worried for everyone's safety with Reptile in this scene. The sense of danger was at an all-time high, and it feels like they just barely squeaked out a victory over him here. So, yes, Reptile keeps losing every time he's in the movie. Like, well, of course, right? Like, you can't have the bad guys win. The good guys have to win. But here, their victory over him, it was just like, oh, thank God we won. As opposed to, I'm a better fighter, so I'm going to beat you.
Right. And, yeah, again, I appreciated it was like 3-on-1. I really like that it's Kano ripping out his heart because he has a line where he's doing a horrible torture to someone and he's thinking about getting his dead mother gifts. And I feel like that's the exact character.
And his mother's been dead for 30 years.
Exactly. But it makes sense that type of character is the one to rip out the heart. Like you're not going to get like Sonya Blade or Cole wasn't going to go fish in there for that heart. You needed someone who's used to torturing people and mutilating them to do that. So I appreciated that type.
Yeah. I mean, and this kind of takes me back to like Kano, how he's like my favorite character in the whole thing. I mean, there's this one scene where he's like, "Do you know who I am, mate? I'm Kano of the Black Dragon. I'm wanted in over 35 countries for shit you can't even imagine." And it's like, dude, that was a great callback because in the Mortal Kombat 1 bio, it says he's wanted in 35 countries. Like, I can't believe they went and made that into the movie.
Yeah, it's really great how they've fit in a lot of different. I didn't even get the foot sweep thing, so there's probably a bunch of other stuff that I've missed.
There's some stuff that I wouldn't even think to explain that it's a nod. It's just like so instinctive for being so immersed in Mortal Kombat after all these years. You know what I mean? But there's lots of stuff like that where I know exactly what they're talking about in the games when they do this stuff.
Another thought for a video if you want to do it, like just references in the new Mortal Kombat movie.
The only thing I'm afraid is there's so many that I'm gonna miss out on. Like I just saw one on Instagram. Somebody posts a picture of they zoomed in on Cabal and they see a police badge and the police badge says Striker on it. And then in the other day when I did that live stream, I had a chatter. He came in and he commented, "Did you notice that the brand of beer that Kano is drinking is the exact same one that Jax was drinking in MK11 story mode?" It's like all these little things that people are picking up on. We'll be dissecting that stuff for a long time.
That brings up an interesting point. Do you think they'll ever introduce like the new stuff like Chronica and Cetrion into this universe?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like if they wanted to, they probably would have just done it. But okay, so like in Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge, they did a little sneaky where they introduced the one being, without mentioning his name. They kind of just, it was very mysterious and very, people had to like look for it to catch it. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. I feel like all that stuff, that deep Mortal Kombat lore, if they wanted to throw that in there, they could have.
Okay, so I've seen your video on the one being. I didn't catch it in Scorpion's Revenge. So now I'm really curious to rewatch and see where it happens. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to go the one being route or the mythological route with this movie series. It does seem like they're going to keep it to the gritty stuff, and the outworld mythological stuff is kind of in the background. I'm hoping they don't do that though, but we'll see.
Yeah, it would be weird because fans kind of like to say, "Oh, this is like another timeline. Kronika just reset the timeline." As soon as you show Kronika in this movie, and if it's not, I don't know, it's like, "Oh, well, this is a different Kronika." So now that theory's out the window. You know what I mean? It's almost better just let fans think that and not show her.
Yeah, and they can always make the reference and they can argue.
Right, like they did with Bo Raicho. You remember how they mentioned Bo Raicho is Liu Kang's trainer here.
Oh, see, I missed that. I missed that part. I guess
Watch it with the subtitles on. Like you can catch so much more stuff like that. It's so cool. Yeah, Bo Raicho was name dropped.
That's crazy because a lot of people really revile that character, but
Yeah,
some people like him.
They do, but hey, whether you like him or not, he is canonically the one who trained Liu Kang and Kung Lao. So even if they don't show him, for them to name drop him the same way they did in MK9, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know how to feel about Bo Raicho. If they ever do him in a movie or any adaptation, I don't know how they're going to do it. Because is he going to be comic relief? Is he going to be more of a mentor? How do you balance those two tones? I'm kind of curious. Because they did it in Conquest mode. Would you say they did it well in Conquest mode in Deception?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so maybe
I mean, he almost didn't have any comic relief, until when you were playing as him, yeah, but otherwise he's just straight up, I'm here to teach you, I'm here to train you. There's certain things that you're not ready for. Okay, now you're ready, I'll show you. Like,
so I guess the way they could do it is that he could be serious in like dramatic scenes, but once there's but the odd fart joke, or they leave the fart jokes for the actual fights, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have fart jokes. I don't know. Maybe they would.
Yeah, we'll have to see. It's interesting new territory for sure. I really
let me pick your brain. Let me pick your brain about something else. All right, so Kung Lao, he has his soul stolen in the movie. Shang Tsung gets him. Cabal's kind of like mocking him, like, "Oh yeah, that's the scream you hear whenever someone's getting their soul sucked." Like, pretty dark for Cabal to be just enjoying himself there. But what do you think about the odds of getting Kung Lao back? Do you think he could be restored to life in this universe?
Actually, I think I'm hoping that's the route they take, that they make him kind of like they did Zombie Liu Kang or Revenants. They make him a sort of Revenant in the next movie. And then Liu Kang is conflicted about it.
I was thinking, do you think they'll be able to like put him back? Like, that's my friend. You bring him back right now or I'll beat his soul out of your body.
I mean, that could be something they do. I think they'll go the Revenant route just because they've done it in the recent games and because it would make for a great story conflict. Like, Kung Lao, don't you remember me? Like, is it cliche? Sure. But I mean, there's a lot of cliche stuff in Mortal Kombat. And it's more just seeing it all come together that makes it interesting.
Maybe when Liu Kang finally kills Shang Tsung, then Kung Lao becomes restored to normal.
Yeah, they could go that route. I guess, are you thinking about the 95 movie, though? It sounds like you're thinking about how he frees his brother from Shang Tsung a little bit.
But see, that was kind of different. That was like they have one moment and it's like a final send-off. I'm thinking I'd prefer it where Kung Lao he's back,
And that could be even like the main plot device in the movie. Like that's the main driving force.
It could be, and then they could even have Kung Lao recite that famous line, It's like, wow, I can't believe you're back from death. And he'd say, oh, death is just another portal.
All that just to build up to that line, just to hear it again. Yeah, that could be cool. What did you think?
Or they could use other lines too, like Liu Kang will say, "Free my friend, free Kung Lao." And Shang Tsung will be like, "Over my dead body."
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's the only way.
That could be interesting. Do you think they'll ever have Cary Hiroyuki Takada do a cameo?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he's Shang Tsung in the games. They made him Shang Tsung in MK Legacy. Like, it seems like no matter what version of Shang Tsung is out there in the Mortal Kombat multiverse, eventually he'll just take the form of Cary Tagawa.
Right, in some way, in some shape or form. By the way, I like how he's Shang Tsung, the character. He started out just as a Lo Pan parody, which Lo Pan himself was a parody of other, kung fu villains. But yeah, I like how he's really evolved. I mean, he really came to his own with John Turk's portrayal in Mortal Kombat 2, and then he kind of evolved from there. And now it comes back full circle with Cary Hiroyuki in Mortal Kombat 11. A lot of people thought he was weak in this movie. I don't know how to feel about him. What did you think of him in this new movie?
Okay, so I liked his eyes. They were like black and creepy. They were definitely using the special effects to kind of make him a little bit creepier than he was. There was a theme with Shang Tsung that they never actually explored in the movie, but somebody took some screenshots of the bios, and it seemed like they said Shang Tsung is fighting for his dying realm. And it kind of gave this impression that he kind of has to win or else Outworld is doomed. You know what I mean? Like, he needs to capture Earthrealm, and he's going to be a hero for his own people if he can do it. And I don't know. I kind of like that. It made him a little bit more tragic and a little bit more likable. But we never saw that come across in the actual movie.
Right.
And
You
then someone
telling
else
me?
pointed out to me that Shang Tsung never morphs in this movie. And it's like, oh, crap. He's
Yeah,
supposed
he
to be a
doesn't.
shapeshifter. That never happened.
I'm hoping they do a lot more with him in the next movie. He is underutilized. I mean, there's no way to other way to put it.
I
They
would like to see
also,
more screen time with him. Yeah.
yeah, like, yeah, he needs to shapeshift, like you said. He needs to. We want to see his motivation, why he's motivated, and we don't want him to be just like Shao Kahn's lackey, and he's just kind of, he's just kind of like a corporate guy, just in the outworld terms. Like we don't need that. We needed like he needs to be really convinced, like, hey, I'm doing this for like a people, like because there's not enough of that in movies. Like we always see the bad guy, the evil warlord, like, oh, they're just doing it because they're greedy and power hungry. Well, let's see why they're greedy and power hungry. Why do they want to raid this village? Why do they want to take over this land? Because in their heads, they think they're doing good by their people because they
Well, that's
grew up
one
with
thing I
that.
liked about like in the Spider-Man movie when what happened with the Green Goblin. I kind of felt like, yeah, these jerks, they just stole your company from you. Like, get them.
Right. Yeah. So it'd be nice to see that. That's why I think this movie could have used more of a viral campaign, like the one that like Cloverfield had, because okay, then you wouldn't have to explain as much stuff in the movie, and then certain things that aren't in the movie, like you said, they could be in bio cards. But you saying it is the first I heard of him having that motivation. So I think that's another thing is they should really push a viral campaign.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think they always want to do that. I think they're marketing WB. They know what they're doing, but yeah, maybe they could have done it a little bit differently here.
Do you think they just didn't want to put as much money into it just because of COVID and they knew it wasn't going to pull in the numbers that they
No,
otherwise?
no, no, no. I think they have a lot of faith in this movie. I think they're getting a lot more HBO Max subscriptions because of this movie. Like, I really think this is going to be a big breadwinner for them. In fact, they didn't want to cannibalize themselves. They didn't want to release this at the same time as Godzilla versus King Kong, so they purposely delayed it by another week. No, I think
Right.
WB is definitely counting on this movie to build them up.
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, I don't know. I just wish there was a viral campaign, and because the way I envision the movie is like it'd be nice if they didn't explain a lot of things. Like I'd rather they focus on character motivations than just explaining this is the Shaolin Temple. This is this is Raiden. He's the god of thunder. Like I'd rather if like some of it was left to the imagination. Because think about it. At the end of the day, there's two audiences they want. They want the fans who already know this stuff, or at least the basics, and then they want the newcomers. You don't want newcomers who are soccer moms. They're not going to watch this movie. That's what it felt like. Sometimes they're like trying to get the soccer mom crowd because they're going to be confused, but they're not going to watch the movie. You have someone's head explode. So they're not gonna. They're not even going to watch trailers for it. So I'm hoping they do. They would have did that. And I feel like the '95 movie was really good at balancing that. Did they balance that? Did they kind of lose some of the backstory with like Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Reptile kind of was like this weird lizard in a statue? Yeah, but still, I prefer the pacing because it's just okay. We just need to develop these like heroes. We need to talk about their backstories and their character arcs, and then everything is kind of in service to that. Whereas this movie felt like it was kind of confused about that a little bit. Like, oh, Sonya Blade needs a character arc. Oh, but Melina gets no kind of backstory. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Yeah, and that was one of those things where a lot of the villains we didn't really get to spend enough time with them. And that's one of those things where that was kind of a problem with Justice League, so they kind of fixed that with the Snyder cut, which did you see the Snyder cut?
I've seen bits and pieces. It's better than the original. I can tell right away, but yeah, I haven't seen the whole thing.
Well, okay, so they had more scenes with like Darkseid, which is kind of cool because Steppenwolf acting like a stand-in for Darkseid, that really didn't work for a lot of people. And if they did a sort of that kind of cut for Mortal Kombat, I would like to see Shao Kahn there and kind of bossing Shang Tsung around, and I would like to learn Shang Tsung's motivation a little bit more. You know what I mean? I would have liked. I would definitely like to see a longer version of this where they kind of expand on the characters, especially the villains' backstories more.
I think they're trying to save the Shao Kahn casting. They don't want to commit to a guy and then they change him like in a later movie.
Well, they could make him like completely CG too, like they did with Goro. You know what I mean? Like they have a lot
Yeah,
of freedom to to do stuff like that these days. Things that they couldn't do back with Mortal Kombat Annihilation and Mortal Kombat Conquest, they can do now.
Interesting you bring up Conquest, because I always thought that the actor who plays Raiden and Shao Kahn in that series is the best Shao Kahn and Raiden.
Yes, Jeffrey Meek.
Yeah, I think he does. What do you think? Like, who's the best Raiden after this movie?
Oh, well, I said before that I was a big fan of Richard Epcar's performance.
Right.
We first got introduced to him in Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, and he nailed the part of Raiden, and he's been it ever since. So I think Richard Epcar has got my favorite Raiden performance of all time.
Okay. Do you think they could bring back Jeffrey Meek as Shao Kahn, or is he too old now?
No, I don't think he's too old. I think Shao Kahn is supposed to look like hideously deformed when he takes his helmet off. I think that it doesn't matter how old you are, the makeup crew can do that for you.
Yeah, or they could pull a Thanos, like you said, they can CGI him anyways, right?
They could do that too. Yeah, I think that well, after seeing the Snyder Cut and seeing how they made Darkseid, that's kind of the route that I imagine they would go. Yeah.
Okay. They could get the voice from MK11. I do like that voice from MK11. I really like Shao Kahn, how he's fleshed out in Mortal Kombat Aftermath. Like, he's just having fun with Sindel, and so like I like that version of Shao Kahn who's having a little bit of fun.
Okay.
So we'll
I could see that, yeah. And, it kind of was fun to see where he was going to, like, execute all those people as traitors, but he was going to forgive them if they fought for him now. And, the timing of this is funny. John Tobias recently said that his inspiration for the name Shao Kahn came from real-life historical figures like Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan. And I actually learned a lot more about Genghis Khan since then. And it's like, hey, that's kind of how he got his... that was kind of his thing, like to bring together different factions within Mongolia that were fighting against each other. He sort of united the different tribes under him. And there were occasions where he would spare his enemies and not execute them if they would agree to fight for him going forward. Like, that was kind of the inspiration behind Shao Kahn initially way back in MK2. And we're seeing that happen again in Aftermath. And yeah, like you said, he was having fun with it. But I think my all-time favorite Shao Kahn performer is the original Steve Ritchie from MK2, who was brought back in Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. I really feel like he's the original voice of Shao Kahn. If they're going to do anything with Shao Kahn, get this guy back while we still can.
Yes, we need someone to say, "You suck" to Cole Young.
Yes, oh my God.
For all the fans.
We're all thinking it.
Yeah. What? I had another thought, and it's escaping me right now. That's what I wanted to say. So I guess one thing I'm hoping with Mortal Kombat is I feel like the tone is always kind of, and I mean this with all respect, but like it has kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon vibe to it. And,
I mean, Defenders of the Realm definitely had that vibe.
Yeah, for sure. But how do I say this? Like, everything's like very, very black and white. Good versus the bad, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. There's definitely
that went away starting in MKX.
Right. I mean, but there's still a lot of black and white, no?
No, well, I mean, no. You had Outworld is fighting a civil war. You've got Kotal Khan. You've got Melina. Who do you support? You know what I mean? Like, who's really the good guy? Should Edenia be united with Outworld? Is that stronger? Does Edenia deserve independence? Like, whoa, wait, what are my beliefs on this? Which one of them do I support? I guess whichever one of them is going to be nicer to Earthrealm. Like, it's like, I got to watch out for my interests. It kind of brought you out of the whole good versus evil, and it kind of made you say, hey, there really is no good versus evil. There's just different groups of people, each with their own interests.
So
it's like, welcome to adulthood.
Right. So, but do you feel this movie does a good job of that, making a gray area? Because a lot of it's pretty black and white so far.
Oh, okay. So in regards to this movie, no, this is the classic good versus evil. Yeah, like, other than Kano and Cabal, like if you're from Earth, and I guess Sub-Zero, if you're from Earth, you're a good guy. Otherwise, you're a bad guy.
Right. So I guess where I'm looking for them to go with this is to make, I don't know, maybe make even more gray areas, maybe even more than the games have right now. Because like I said, I'm a big fan of like Ancient Tragedy and that sort of stuff. So I'd love to see like Rain make an appearance and you kind of understand where he's coming from. And I know we talked about Shang Tsung's motivation, just it wasn't fleshed out. I want to see that get a focus. Like, oh, there's a reason they're doing it this way. Like, have this like these warrior philosophies that you just have to kind of try to understand, sort of thing.
Well,
I don't know if I'm making sense, but
the original Mortal Kombat game, the first one, there was really a very big sense of, and I don't know, when did you jump into Mortal Kombat? What was your first experience with it?
Exposed to it as a kid in passing, but really got into it in Mortal Kombat 9.
Okay, so if you play the first one, Mortal Kombat 1, there's a very big sense of it's every man for himself. You know what I mean? There's no teams, there's no alliances, there's there's no factions. It's Kano wants to win because he wants to win. Raiden wants to win because he wants to win. Sub-Zero wants to win. He's got his own thing going on. Johnny Cage wants to make a movie and tell everybody about a hero he is. Liu Kang wants to wrest the tournament back away and get it for his Shaolin people. Like, everyone has their own motivation. You don't get the sense that they're going to be teaming up with each other. It was kind of cool. That disappeared real quickly in MK2, where there was definitely a sense of, we've got to team up and stick together now. And maybe that did happen in MK1. Maybe that sort of team up happened throughout the course of the game, and we just didn't really see it until we found out how MK1 unfolded in MK2. But you do see that kind of thing, what you're talking about, where there's no black and white. It's just all shades of gray. And that was kind of how the first game was. Now, if that's going to happen in the movies, I think what they need to do is kind of like Marvel with the cinematic universe, where shine the spotlight on the Shaolin monks. Shine the spotlight on Edenia and some of these other realms that Shao Kahn has conquered. And you kind of have to do these side stories, all these things that have happened in the MK universe. You kind of have to show that unfold. And I would advise they do that without inventing any more new characters that have to be the spotlight. I would say stick to the characters that we know for the most part.
Right. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. But I lost my thought again.
Well, sorry, you were talking about like good and evil and shades of gray and stuff like that, and I was saying the best way to do that, which was kind of how it was in MK1, was to do sort of like a Marvel Cinematic Universe thing. Have a Shaolin Monks movie, have a Shao Kahn takeover movie.
Right. No, for sure, and I think that'll definitely fix the issue that I had with this movie, where they just have to kind of rush past things, and you don't see what happens with Melina and what her backstory is. She's kind of just a jobber and that sort of thing. You get to kind of see the spotlight on these different fighters, especially if they're going to bring back people. That's the thought I had. What if to make things even more gray, like to create some sort of disillusion amongst the Earthrealm warriors, Shang Tsung shapeshifts like he should, and he manipulates people against each other.
Yeah, like that would be a good movie, and he kind of does that like in MK Shaolin Monks. He kind of like he sows the seeds of dissent among the Earthrealm warriors and tries to get them to bicker and fight amongst themselves and do his work for him. Yeah, that could definitely work in a movie. Yeah, but I'll tell you like what I would like to see. Like, how about like let's say they wanted to show Shang Tsung and Shao Kahn and get into their past and show them taking over realms. I could think of at least 3 different realms that they could take over. They could take over Goro's realm of Shao Kahn. They could take over Natara's realm, the vampire realm of Viternus, and they could take over Edenia. That allows them to explore Melina and Kitana. That allows them to explore Natara. That allows them to explore Goro. All the people that we saw in this movie, and of course some more people. They could, Reiko and all them. That could explore like what is Natara's motivation? Is she fighting for her freedom? Does Shang Tsung say, if you want your realm freed, help me get Earthrealm? We've been trying to get Earthrealm for a long time. You help me get this one in exchange for your realm. That's why Natara is fighting. She just wants what's best for her people, and she's doing what the only way she knows how.
You brought up Reiko. I'm hoping they retcon Reiko so that it's like a different Reiko in this movie, because this one was like, I think Reiko doesn't get his due. I think there's more you can do with that character than just he's a Shao Kahn wannabe, But maybe I'm wrong on that.
No. There's a lot more you could do with him. I don't think he didn't have any speaking lines. Someone said he might have screamed or given a grunt or something, which is the same thing that happened with Natara.
What did you think of Cabal and the Black Dragon plot in this movie?
All right, so I thought it was cool to see Cabal. You could definitely tell there was some history there that he had with Kano, but we don't know what it was. We don't know how did Cabal fight for Team Outworld, and how did he start doing that before Kano even did? There's a lot of history there that I want to see. Like I said, this is why I wanted the director's cut. I want the 4-hour version. I want to know more about it. I really want to get into this and explore it more deeply. How did Cabal get his scars, and what happened to him? This is normally he gets that during the course of Shao Kahn's invasion. Shao Kahn's invasion hasn't happened here yet. Here's Cabal already having the scars. So I definitely want to know some more information about this.
He said there's a line from Cabal that Kano is responsible for it, but we don't know why. We don't know how he caused it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kano said, "Hey, Cabal, meet me here and here. We're going to loot this place." And then he set Cabal up to get captured or get caught by somebody. So I have this theory, and I saw this in the other video. I know you only saw 15 minutes of it. I'm going to reiterate it here. Now, it's not a perfect theory, and there are some ways to make it work. But do you remember how in the trailer and in the movie they said that the target had supernatural abilities and he took out an entire unit in seconds? Who could take out an entire unit in seconds? A speedster. So I think it's Cabal. I think Cabal is the one who ended up getting killed by special forces, brought back, but not all the way, and he blames Kano. Kano was the one who kind of tricked him. He was Kano's partner. Kano double-crossed him, let him get caught by special forces, left him for dead. I think Kano actually ended up saving his life, though. So, if we go by the MK9 story, it probably happened in a similar way to that.
Okay.
Different version of Cabal, and this is just a theory, a film theory, but it's kind of one that I think makes a lot of sense, and I think it could be supported. The dragon would have flown off of Cabal and onto Jax, but Cabal could have retained his superpowers, his super speed, with Shang Tsung and Outworld's help.
Right, but it begs the question, like, why does he offer Kano anything if Kano's responsible? But if Kano's the one that got him into the suit, maybe he owes it to him, sort of thing.
It's like you bastard, you killed me and you did this to me, but I also know that you ended up saving me too, so I'm a little conflicted. I'm gonna come here and make you this offer, and you know what I mean. I'll shit talk you, but I'll also get you in on the winning team, so to speak.
Or maybe he just wanted to get in good with Shang Tsung, and this was his best way to do it.
Yeah, that's also a good point.
I mean, because he could always backstab Kano later, anyways, right? So.
Yeah, I don't think he will.
Yeah.
I don't think, but you know what? It's kind of like, okay, so Cabal's dead now, right? He got killed by Liu Kang, and
dead.
He was trapped in the quicksand. And it's funny because as a kid, I always thought that quicksand was going to be a bigger problem than it turned out to be.
Have you ever been in a quicksand pit, like a real one?
No. Have you?
Have you ever explored and just seen, hey, this is what a quicksand looks like? Sort of.
No, but I spent a lot of time thinking about, like, if I was trapped in quicksand, what are some ways I could get out of it? I guess if I carried a rope with me and I could throw it around the tree and like pull myself out, you know what I mean? Like they say, don't struggle against it because struggling against it only makes it worse.
Yeah, I heard something like a real fact about it. Like I know tar pits are very dangerous because that's how a lot of animals, that's how they find their fossils.
Yeah, they're preserved very well.
But quicksand, like, it's not necessarily fatal. I think is what I heard, or I could be just going out of my mind right now.
Yeah, well, like I said, I spent a lot of time thinking about it, but I haven't actually spent any time in quicksand, so I couldn't tell you for sure.
Right.
I do know this. It probably is fatal if you're trapped in quicksand and there's a dragon made out of fire that's going to bite you in half.
That's probably going to do it.
Yeah, not a good situation to be in.
I thought it was very brutal how he dispatches Cabal. I know he was like laughing at his friend's soul getting sucked, but he burns the man alive. It's, I don't know. It doesn't seem very Shaolin-like.
No, it doesn't. But I mean, I guess everybody loses control once in a while.
That's true. But then he acts like he's in control as it's happening, like fatality. So, but I know it's Mortal Kombat. You got to kind of play it that way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's like kind of a big pacifist, and Liu Kang didn't seem like the most confident character in this movie. You know what I mean? He seemed like he was very nervous. He seemed like he was very unsure of himself, and maybe part of that is because he's worried he's going to lose control.
Yeah, they could explore that in the next movie. I thought Ludi Lin was decent as Liu Kang. So I think they could go that route. And
yeah, I
give him
like
that
Liu
depth.
Lin. I thought he was a good Liu Kang. And I mean, when I say that Liu Kang appeared unconfident, obviously that was Ludi doing that on purpose. That's how he was playing it.
Canada represent. I think he's Canadian, but um, yeah. So did you have any other thoughts that you wanted to share about the movie or what the movies could be like going forward?
I guess my main thought is, you know what? I really liked the movie. I really liked the tone. I really thought it was fun to watch. There were a couple things that I think could be tweaked. I think if they lost Liu Kang, I think if they changed the story around with Jax's arms, it would have been great. Kano was my favorite character by far. I think they found the right balance of violence mixed in with comedy. I feel like they captured the essence of what Mortal Kombat is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with just a few tweaks, it could have been a perfect movie. But as far as enjoyability, I feel like it's a tie between this and the 1995 film. I feel like I enjoy them both just as much, even though I would change more about this one to make it the perfect film.
So it's not as good as Annihilation, then, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you got the gist of it. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I was trying to get Nick, my partner in the podcast, I was trying to get him to watch MK Annihilation. And I said, no, it's so bad, it's good. And he's like, he watched halfway through and he's like, no, this is so bad, it's just bad. So.
Well, the thing about something like that is you kind of have to trick him into going into a theater and watching it with a room full of people. Because then you can't just walk out of the theater,
True. But I can't get him out to do anything. We just do everything. Even before COVID, we just did everything remotely, except jiu-jitsu, obviously, but that'd be kind of weird. Have you ever tried
No. You can sign up to do martial arts classes online. You absolutely should.
No, but I'm saying with jiu-jitsu, it's kind of like you have to grapple another body. So unless you have like a grappling dummy, you can't really do much.
It sounds like you just answered your own question.
True. Anyways, I think that's all I had to say about the movie. I mean, we could talk about Mortal Kombat for hours, but I don't want to keep you too long.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to say about Mortal Kombat in general, maybe besides the movie?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if you're up for it. Yeah, I always like I think when you watch Showdown in Little Tokyo, you'll see what I'm talking about. What do you think of Big Trouble in Little China's influence on it? Obviously, it has a huge influence, but do you feel like Mortal Kombat has ever captured kind of that fun campiness that movie was about, that John Carpenter tone that he's so known for?
Yeah, I think definitely the influence was obvious. I enjoy Mortal Kombat even more than Big Trouble in Little China. I think they got that tone and took it to the next level. I think they found an even better tone. That's just my opinion. But I'll tell you something. This is not a very well-known fact. One of Melina's fatalities is inspired by Big Trouble in Little China.
No way. Which one?
Okay, so it's like near the end sequence of that movie where someone like blows up.
Right. Oh,
okay, I overheard this from somewhere, and now I'm trying to remember what it was exactly. It might have been Katana's Kiss of Death fatality that was kind of like the guy gets big and fat and explodes and like that. I think that was actually what Big Trouble in Little China inspired. So everybody defaults to kind of like, well, the storms and Raiden. It's like, okay, yeah, the storms. Obviously the comparisons were inevitable, and John Tobias said he knew people were going to compare it to the big storms, but he kind of liked that because then people would identify, oh, he's the lightning god. I get it. But there's that too, there's the Katana fatality. I can't remember now if it was Katana or Melina's like Bones fatality that was inspired, but it was one of them.
Because Katana's the one that does the kiss and it blows the guy, it inflates the guy.
Yes.
So I think you're talking about that one. Yeah.
Yes. It's been a while since I saw Big Trouble in Little China. That's why I was having trouble remembering.
By the way, I love that death scene. He sees his masters died, and instead of getting revenge for him, he just kind of blows up.
Yep.
I love the performance in that. I love the performances, all the performances in that movie. It's a special movie. Everyone knew the type of movie they were making, and everything just comes together so well.
Well, in the East versus West, where the Eastern people know what's going on, and the Western people are like, wait, what is all this? That was something that I think Mortal Kombat captured very well. And then also, it's we kind of alluded to this earlier. Enter the Dragon. Where this guy has an island and he's luring people to it. But that was different because that was just like a rich guy who had a tournament every 3 years. So they kind of brought everything together. I think I think it really captured their so well everything that they loved about the 70s and the 80s and mashed them together and made it even cooler and as they did their own thing.
So what do you think? What do you think exactly is the appeal of Mortal Kombat? I know I kind of asked this in the beginning, but like, what exactly is it about how they mash up the 80s and the 90s that just attracts like our type of fan base?
I think that they were riding the wave of the popularity of Street Fighter 2. So you got to remember, Street Fighter 2 was huge. They wanted to do a one-on-one fighting game. They kind of liked Karate Champ, which I just played Karate Champ literally yesterday while I was at Galloping Ghost Arcade in Chicago. And I'm like, okay, this is too hard to get into. Street Fighter 2 definitely made it a cool fighting game that was fun to play and it was satisfying. And they're like, okay, we wanted to do a fighting game. Now the Street Fighter 2 thing came out. Let's go. And I think they kind of already had the idea in their head and they just needed to flesh it out a little bit more. But I feel like the timing of it was right, so that not that they couldn't lose, but that if they were gonna win, they had to make their move right when they did.
Right. And
so I think the timing was everything.
I think a lot of things do come to timing when you make these like Star Wars is down to timing. You make that in a different place without the editors that they had, it's a big flop. You'd never hear about Star Wars, right?
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think the actors that they had too was like a big part of what made Star Wars what it is. And I feel like even the actors in Mortal Kombat, I guess maybe actors isn't the right word, but the real life fighters who were digitized made Mortal Kombat what it is.
Yes, yeah.
If they had tried to do something today where you have CG and you don't have like those sort of limitations that they had placed on them by the technology at the time, we would have gotten something different. And you can kind of see it, like once everything went CG and they could kind of build anything they could imagine, they would make the characters that they make were just different than the characters that they had to make then.
What do you think of the characters in the new ones introduced in the 3D era, like Kira or the Cobra Kai guy or those ones?
Cobra. Wait, you mean Cobra or Kai?
I guess I don't know at this point. Was his name Cobra? Because I always think Cobra Kai when I think of him.
Well, there is a guy named Cobra, and there is a guy named Kai. Like, I'm 100% serious on that.
Oh, wait. Yeah, I'm not talking about Kai from MK4. I'm talking about the guy
Cobra.
who looks... Yeah, Cobra, yeah.
The guy who looks like Ken.
Yeah,
you're about to say.
Much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, what do you think of those characters? Like, some people think they're not very creative, but then you got Kenshi, who everybody loves. So, like, what do you think of those? I like those characters. I like Mai. I like the Kira. I like what they did with them. Because it's all about... To me, Mortal Kombat has always been like an assassin fighting simulator, right? So I personally like them. I don't know what your take is.
Okay, yeah, they were cool, but they're never gonna reach the popularity of, like Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Liu Kang, Johnny Cage. You're never gonna have people say, well, you can't make a Mortal Kombat game without Su-Hao. You know what I mean?
I like you went Su-Hao. You had to go the lowest character created.
Yeah, well, I could have picked Movado because now Su-Hao's got his fans. Now Su-Hao has his fan base, like unironically, people who want to see him return.
Really? What's wrong with Movado? I always thought, like, why don't people like Movado?
Okay, so I mean, I can't really tell you this is why everybody doesn't like Movado, but I'll tell you why I don't think he caught on as popular, because he looks a little generic compared to the other characters. His moves are kind of weird. He has like these hooks that he uses to kind of propel himself in just unnatural ways. It's not really that relatable. Like I said, if they were in 2 dimensions, if they were forced to use the constraints of like real life and videotaping people, they would have had to take him in a different direction. And I think that worked. I think those limitations and 2D worked well. And I think the 3D, they kind of tried some weird experimental stuff that just didn't quite resonate. People do like the rivalry of people like, Havoc and Hotaru, and people do want to see Havoc come back, but it's not to the same degree that you had with like, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and even Reptile and Rain.
Right. Well, and then Melina has her diehard fans as well.
For sure.
What do you think the appeal is of Melina?
I guess the appeal of Melina is, here's the woman, and here she is. She's got power. She's like a powerful woman. She's got sex appeal, and she uses that to her advantage. You know, she can be kind of flirty. She can sort of lure unsuspecting guys in, and then bam, bites them and they're dead.
Right.
I think people like that kind of seductress where she's not a damsel in distress. She's actually really powerful and she's totally dangerous. Um, uh, you know, they say never stick your dick in crazy, but I think people want to make an exception.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'm crazy here, but I wonder if the song by Bill and Oates, or is that their name, Bill and Oates?
Maneater?
Maneater, exactly. Yeah,
That
I wonder
totally was an inspiration for her. Oh my God, yes.
yeah, okay. So that makes complete sense. I think, yeah, like you said, she has a great assassin quality in being able to lure someone in just to stick them with the sai or eat them alive, right? So
Right, yeah. No, I think that's kind of what Melina's appeal was. Now, I think that's sort of Melina's appeal now, but I think in the original, I really feel strongly that having a rivalry helps to cement the popularity. And with Mortal Kombat and all the palette swap ninjas, they were instantly fan favorites. So Scorpion and Sub-Zero have that rivalry right from the beginning. Katana and Melina, they're sisters, but there's a good twin and there's an evil twin, and I think people like that. And I think the fans kind of like putting their own spin on it, because obviously having one good one and one bad one is a little bit of an oversimplification, you know?
right.
Katana's like, she's the rightful heir of Outworld, and she was supposed to be this princess of Edenia, and everything got taken away from her. And then they're cloning her and making an evil version of her that's actually supposed to replace her. They kind of took her and made a monster out of her, and that's who Melina is. But then I think fans kind of took that in their headcanon, and they made Melina the tragic figure, where it's like, all she wants is a sister, and Katana only sees her as a monster. And have, you know, poor Katana, what about poor Melina? So I really think the fans kind of, especially in the newer games, kind of took it in that direction.
I still feel like we haven't seen that in any iteration of Melina.
No,
though.
we've never seen it. Well, it's weird because Katana and Melina were never in the same scene in Annihilation, and Melina was never really explained in Annihilation.
Yeah.
And now that they've got Melina in this movie, they did it without Katana. So the whole storyline and the whole thing that makes her interesting is kind of like I said, the rivalry between Katana and Melina, and we don't really see that on screen, at least not yet. We've never had an adaptation that sort of integrated it, which is why I think they need to do a movie about Shao Kahn's conquests of other realms.
Yeah, it's like she's just a token character. Like they were obliged to put her in there. And ironically,
let me retcon what I just said, to use your phrase. MK Legacy did a good job of showing Katana and Melina's rivalry.
Yeah, that's true. I do remember those episodes where they explored that.
They were great. They were honestly great.
As you can tell, I'm all over the place with my MK consumption. Some of the stuff I've seen, some of it's like partial. But yeah, I did catch those episodes of Legacy. Yeah, I really liked Kano. For some reason, I thought Kano in Legacy was played by Scott Adkins, but it's just a guy who looks like him. Do you know who Scott Adkins is?
Refresh my memory, because I really only know Mortal Kombat and nothing else.
Okay. Scott Adkins, he's been in some famous fight scenes. He was in like a really famous one in Ong Bak 3 with Tony Jaa. He has his own YouTube channel where he interviews like old action stars like Dolph Lundgren and Cynthia LaRock. I forget her exact last name, but Cynthia Rock, I want to say, for some reason. I wonder if she was an inspiration for a Mortal Kombat at all. Maybe, I'm probably stretching, but she was pretty
she
good.
Is. I have like an old issue of GamePro. They literally say, Ed Boon says like, oh yeah, that Cynthia, she's a totally noble person. I really liked her, and that was kind of like where I wanted to go with it.
Wow, I'm learning all kinds of things on this. So that's really cool to hear, because I feel like because she was a woman in the 80s, like people didn't take her seriously, but she had like legit martial arts and kicks that she did.
And she has her fan base. You know, she's got a following for sure. She's very popular.
Yeah. Which reminds me of Carrie Hoskins. She's had a bit of a resurgence lately. I feel kind of bad for Liz Malecki, because whenever people think about Sonya Blade, they think about Carrie.
I just got this.
Oh, wow. So she signed it?
Yeah. That just arrived. Like, since I just flew back into town today, I saw that was waiting for me, and it's like, yes.
That's really cool. She's done some interviews on YouTube channels. I always wanted to know, have you seen the interview she was in the background of the interview. But do you remember that interview for MK4 where
Yes.
you know what I'm talking about? Okay,
Yeah,
do you
there's
know?
like a little clip of it that's gone viral again. It's like kind of there's like that thing is resurging.
Do you know the story behind it? Because it feels like I can understand why she found him obnoxious, but it feels like there's more to the story.
I'd have to look into it. I'd have to refresh my memory.
Okay, because I just feel like right away she's like confrontational with him. Like all he says is hi, and like I don't know, she has like a vibe against him already.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess I don't know the full story then. I do remember there was a podcast that she was on where she talked about a convention that she was at and she was promoting War Gods. And she had this like really cool helmet for the convention. And she turned around for a second, someone swiped it and it was gone. And
That's
it's like that was supposed to be hers. Like that was her personal thing that she was supposed to wear to these things.
that's so that's so weird. Speaking of war gods, I always kind of wish that those like MK clones, as they were called, that they took off more. So unfortunately, we're kind of like relegated to all this stuff being in MK. Like here I am, kind of wishing for a Conan type character in MK when really he should be in his own type of fighting game. I know there's a Killer Instinct Conan, but that's not really the same. So
Well, there was like a Conan the Barbarian game in the 1980s for Commodore 64. So I guess just be satisfied with that.
yeah, I guess for now. Speaking of MK clones, did you ever play or were exposed to Mace the Dark Age?
Yeah, I played it a couple times. Yeah, they have that at Galloping Ghost too. And I tried some other ones like Tattoo Assassins. Um, yeah, I definitely played Killer Instinct, although I think that's its own thing. I wouldn't call that a clone. Um, but yeah, I played some of these other fighting games, some of these more obscure fighting games that never caught on. Eternal Champions was like another big one. Primal Rage, that actually got a sequel. There
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
Primal Rage 2, although I don't really think that ever made it into arcades in the 90s. I think that was basically just a prototype that people have gotten.
So I have a funny story with this. So the story with that game, as far as I know, is that they actually did do a prototype and they did a tour with that prototype. And then someone got a hold of like interviewed one of the developers on it. And apparently it just didn't test well. So they just kind of scrapped it. But those arcade cabinets still exist with that prototype.
Right.
So it's like pretty crazy. Though it's funny because I was doing research for Primal Rage in general. Like I got into a Primal Rage phase and I did a Google search. I came across a forum called Kaiju Files. And then I found out like they mean that name literally. Like they have like the people posting on it have a thing for kaijus, like in that way. So it's so weird how you can be led into these different worlds, these different subcultures just from like these more obscure video games.
Yeah, that's an interesting rabbit hole to go down.
For sure. Have you ever heard of the little off topic? Have you ever heard of the Final Fantasy house?
No.
Google that. Now that's a rabbit hole. That's
Okay.
a rabbit hole. I don't know if you want to go down it, but
I still don't know what a kaiju is.
Oh, kaiju. Oh, I should probably explain that. It's just Godzilla. It's basically Godzilla, Gamera, those giant monsters.
Okay, I thought there was another word for them.
If there is, I don't know what it is. I've always known it by kaiju.
Okay, like they said in the movies, like Godzilla, King Kong, Mothra, all of them belong to a class called Titans.
Oh, so that's what they call them in the rebooted series, but they've always been known, at least in terms of genre, as kaiju.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's me showing my kaiju face that I had to as well. I didn't watch the new movie, by the way. Did you watch King Kong versus Godzilla?
I watched the beginning of it, but it's like when you watch it on an app, it's not the same as going to a movie theater,
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat was the first movie I've seen in theaters in over a year. So with Godzilla versus King Kong, I wasn't interested enough to get me to go to the theater. So it was kind of like, yeah, I watched the beginning and then I kind of stopped.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with streaming is it's both a blessing and a curse with streaming.
It is.
Yeah, because you're not committed, right? Like Quentin Tarantino made this point. Like when you rented something, you were committed. You might as well watch it before you return it to the Blockbuster, right?
It's true. Yeah. You know what? There's all these like unintended consequences of the way that it's changing our viewing habits. It's an issue because it's like, well, I might not have seen any of King Kong versus Godzilla, but because it's streaming, maybe I'll give it like a 15-minute test. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's definitely that. Yeah, it's definitely two-sided. You're always going to get a trade-off, right?
Yeah, it is. So it's a constant balancing act for the entertainment industry to figure out what direction they want to go. I know a lot of people were upset when Warner Brothers announced that they're going to do a simultaneous theatrical release and streaming at the same time. And I know some of the directors and producers are like, "What? Why are you doing this to us? How dare you?" And it's like, well, due to COVID, and makes sense, I guess.
And then plus HBO Max is suffering too, right? So
Yeah,
they wanted to get
they
those
got to
numbers
build
up.
it up,
Yeah.
by making like the Snyder Cut. You got to do it on HBO Max, and by Mortal Kombat is on the app. Like I feel like Warner Brothers is building it up. They've got a lot of competition now. I mean, during the Super Bowl, Paramount Plus was the one really being touted.
Right.
I don't know if you remember those commercials with like Beavis and Butthead and Star Trek and all those. It's like they're doing their thing now.
Oh, I didn't watch the Super Bowl. I'm just kind of an alien that way. I'm the only.
Well, you're Canadian, so you're kind of excused too.
I guess. Yeah, that's true. To bring it back to Mace the Dark Age, we went a little off topic there, but I really liked Lord Deimos in that game. Like I always was really gravitated towards his character, even though he's quite frankly a tyrannical bastard, right? I wish they could do a character like him in the games. Like Shao Kahn doesn't quite fill what he had, at least not aesthetically. What do you think if they ever? By the way, Mace the Dark Age, the rights are up for grabs. Like, what do you think if they ever like pulled in some of those characters?
I guess I don't really know enough about Mace the Dark Age to comment. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So that's two things to check out: Showdown Little Tokyo, maybe Mace the Dark Age. Midway did a port for it, so the Midway guys were familiar with it somehow. But
yeah, that's the one. That's the one that I might have played a couple rounds at Galloping Ghost.
Okay. Yeah, the fatalities are kind of interesting. They kind of, at the time, they went farther than the Mortal Kombat ones. Actually, that brings me to a good point. Do you ever think the Mortal Kombat fatalities go too far?
These days, I mean, yeah, I think they push the I think they push the envelope. I do think they kind of take it a bit too far. Like I feel like Mortal Kombat 2 had the perfect level of fatality violence, and I think with 3 they got a little too cartoony with all like the millions of exploding rib cages and stuff like that. And with Mortal Kombat X especially, some of the violence, like, well, the guy's already dead. Now you're just mutilating a dead body. That's probably a bit much too. I feel like Mortal Kombat 2 had the perfect tone.
Some of them are like, I can't even watch some of them these days. Like Melina's in MKX, Devora's, both of hers in MK11.
How about Goro's in MKX?
See, I don't remember what his is in MKX.
He'll like punch a hole in your chest and then rip off your head and then stuff the head in the chest. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's a little much. They have
it does look kind of cool, but still.
Yeah, it's and then what's another one that's really bad? Well, Garrus's is really bad, but even MK9, they started doing like really bad ones, like Kung Lao and Noob Saibot. Ed Boon has actually said that Noob Saibot's in MK9 is the most disturbing thing he's ever seen.
Well, now I hear it's getting so bad that like one of the developers of MK11 got like PTSD from some of the stuff they had to research on violence to create some of those fatalities.
Yeah, I know me. I'm really bad with that stuff. I still have a little. It's not as bad as it used to be, but I still have a little OCD. So certain violence, when it goes too far, I just can't watch it. Like it scars me for a couple months. It's really bad.
Yeah, because that's all you can think about.
Yeah, so I try to stay away. But the funny thing is, like,
well, I would say don't watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Why is that?
Well, I don't want to tell you because now it's all you'll be able to think about if I say it. So no, just don't.
That's true. Okay, good point.
Yeah, but if anyone ever tries to tell you, hey, you like anime, you should watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, don't do it.
See, I guess it's good you gave me that warning because I always hear good things about that anime, and I guess now I'll stay away. Well, I mean, Fist of the North Star, like I can stand the violence. Have you seen Fist of the North Star? Fist of the North Star, the uncensored Italian version, believe it or not, Italy like pioneered the uncensored version. There's a whole story behind it. But it's from the 80s, and it's when like anime was really weird and disgusting. And the thing about the violence in that movie is it's usually happening to bad guys, so it's not as bad.
Yeah.
I know it's never gonna happen, but I always fantasize about one of the villains from Fist of the North Star getting into Mortal Kombat and them trying like doing their like puncture technique, because that's what it's kind of like acupuncture mixed with kung fu.
Okay.
So, and they actually, what happens is he hits pressure points. And when you hit these pressure points in a certain sequence, it makes the guy explode from the inside.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mortal
So
Kombat has a fatality like that.
yeah, it's Mai, right?
What's that?
I think it's Mai. Mai does it in Deception. Or am I off?
Mortal Kombat doesn't actually have a character named Mai.
Okay, the girl who has the hat and she has pink.
Okay, okay.
Usually.
Oh, yeah. Lee May.
Okay, I don't know why I kept calling her Mai. So yeah, am I talking
You're
about the
thinking
right
of
person?
Virtua Fighter, probably.
Yeah, probably. But or Mai Shiranui from King of Fighters. I played that for a little
Okay,
while.
yeah. King of Fighters too.
Okay, so it's Lee Mai who does Lee May who does it.
I don't remember who does it now that I think about it. I probably did that fatality 100 times back in the 3D era. But yeah, somebody has a character where they just like kind of punch, and then wait a few seconds, then they explode.
Yeah, so that's what the reference is to. It's to Fist of the North Star.
Yeah, I never knew that. I never knew anything about Fist of the North Star, so that's kind of cool that I learned about something like that. That probably is the reference for it.
Yeah, it's really big in Italy. Like my cousin, because I'm half Italian, my cousin, he lives there, and he got me into it. But for some reason, certain animes are really big in Italy. I can't explain it.
Yeah, it's something that happens, just a phenomenon, cultural phenomenon.
For sure. I'm actually running out of battery here. So maybe.
Hey, we've done this for like 2 hours and 45 minutes, so this is probably a good stopping off point anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely really liked having you on the podcast. I don't know if you wanted to do it again sometime about something else more Kombat related or anything that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah,
really.
for sure, man.
For
Anytime.
Sure. So yeah, with that, that's episode 3. I did 2. Why did I do 2? Episode 3 of Cosmic Goop Radio. Hopefully when you have time, watch Evangelion and maybe check out the podcast for those. Whether you're an audience member or tabmok. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
Scotty, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you everybody for watching. Have a good one.
Yes, check out tabmok99's channel. In case you couldn't tell, he's kind of an expert on this stuff. So highly recommended you go over there and check it out. Okay. Bye, guys.
Appreciate it. Bye.